Hello, chat. We are live. What's good? It's Wednesday, and I'm not going to waste a bunch of time here with me talking. I have special guests tonight. But first, well, she's special, but she's always here. Lady Balefire,
Hi guys! Thanks for having me. I'm so excited for the show.
thanks for being here. We got a great night planned, and we've got surprise number one. Well,
Hey, it's
hey,
me, Sporking. Thank you, Zaxers, Zaxafans.
I need to get something like that, like Sporkers, but
Yes, I
yeah,
don't. Does Sporkers even work? I don't know. We'll figure that out as we go. But thank you for having me, man.
you make it work. And the very, very special guest, Kamran
Woo!
Pasha,
Yeah,
Cameron!
it's
the one
great
who
to be on.
everyone's waiting for.
We had such a great time on the last time I came on your channel, Zach. It's to a point that I left to do work and I came back because it was so interesting. I had to set my work aside. So I've actually dedicated some time that I have work to do, but I'll do it in the morning.
Well, thank you so much for coming back, and that was a fantastic show last time, and
Oh,
everyone
that
seemed to
was so
like it.
fun. Oh my gosh.
So many requests to do another one. So, unfortunately, Nicole, who was with us last time through the veil, she's in the hospital. So
She
so
okay?
she, hopefully, yeah, it's I'll let her sort of explain that, but unfortunately, so it's so she can't be here, but prayers are with her,
Prayers.
and yeah, so hopefully when she comes through that, we will have her back on. So she's got an awesome channel too.
Yeah.
And but yes, chat, we've got a packed house here already. Jacob Ironside, hello. Nosferatu the Vampire, Blair to Blair, Stephen Ransom. Thanks for coming, guys. Roman of the Empire, Lady B, I see you there.
Jay's in the house. Hi, Jay.
Who is?
Jay the Deep Minded?
Oh, Jay. Hey, Jay. Josh McDonald. Oh, good to see you, Josh. Josh is also has some Hollywood experience. He's putting together a show, actually.
Ooh. Oh, yeah, Josh.
We talked about his stuff last
Yes,
week a little
Josh.
bit. Thanks for coming here, Josh. Monkey Jeebus is here. Sorry if I missed you guys. But Adventure with Beth. Hey, Beth. Yes, she's surgery. Okay, so yes, she's in for surgery. So thanks for sharing that, Beth. I wasn't sure if that was cool to say or not, but yeah, we're sending our thoughts and prayers to her. So so let's jump right into Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Mandalorian.
Which I
Cameron,
just finished watching 15 minutes ago. So yes.
thoughts, Cameron?
I mean, I loved it. I mean, I was having a great time. I laughed a lot. Grogu was particularly endearing. I thought. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go to spoilers. It's been out for it's been out for a day now, and so, but there's fun pirates and all this stuff. I mean, it felt, again, it just felt like Star Wars to me. That's all I want. My view is very simple. Anything that is made after George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney is fan fiction. Some of it is very good fan fiction. I think Rogue One personally is really good fan fiction, right? I think other stuff that's been made is not good fan fiction. I think The Mandalorian has largely been extremely good fan fiction, and I'm really liking this season beginning. Again, I just want to play with these toys, just like we played with these toys as children. And I get the vibe that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are just playing with these toys like we were playing with them. I made lots of stories as a kid, my own version of events with Luke Skywalker and Han, with my little with my little action figures and whatever. And that's what I feel like I'm watching here. I feel like people playing with the toys, and I'm liking what they're doing with it. So I had a great time.
I I gotta say that one of the things I did like. We can go spoilers, I think, at this point. So if you don't want to hear spoilers for Mandalorian, you guys plug your ears. But one of my favorite parts, and it was a small part of the episode, was definitely a Charles Vane reference for the pirate, right? That had to be a Charles Vane reference. And
The had that old, they had that vibe of Pirates of the Caribbean, like using that old timey language and whatever.
It almost looked like them too. They had like the second what is the one, Dead Man's Chest. They had that look too with some of the Davy Jones people.
Yeah.
What'd you think, Scott?
It was another I'm not a big fan. I'm not a fan at all, actually. And it's personal. It's more I just Pedro Pascal bothers me. But I did watch it. I enjoyed that first scene. I thought it was cool how they made. I felt like it was him being brought into the cult, because to me they're a cult. A lot of religious undertones, the water in the water baptism type thing. But I did enjoy that because I thought that was him as a young boy being, brought into the cult. But it wasn't. He actually, the guy who's kicked out of their cult because he took off his mask was the one that saved them, which is kind of you could see how they were disgusted by that. So I thought that was kind of cool. I did like how the boy never finished the "I won't take my helmet off" part. So I almost felt like that meant something. The pirates are great. It's cool how you see the growth of that city over the seasons.
Yeah.
Actually, God damn it! Now that I'm talking about it, I've actually enjoyed it more than I thought.
You got to pull it out, man.
Which is weird.
You treat it as just kids playing with toys.
Yeah.
Was this a fun Toy Story? That's how I treat it.
I mean, you're all saying that it's a good way of let me put it this way. I've taken myself out of my heart with Star Wars, and I just see it as science fiction. And if it's that to me now and no longer my Star Wars, I actually enjoyed it. But
no one's going to take your Star Wars away from you.
No, my Star Wars is years ago.
Whatever aspects of you that you consider your Star Wars,
Yeah.
some people think it's only 4, 5, and 6. For me, I'm good with anything Lucas did, right?
Yeah,
Some people better
of
than other
course.
stuff. But, no one's going to ever take that away from you. That will
Right.
always be for you.
Right. I enjoyed it. Definitely. This episode was better than anything I saw last year because I was not a fan of last season. I feel like maybe I did like they address Cara Dune. She's like special ops now. But
Which might or may not, we'll find this one up. We may or may not be setting up something.
right.
Ooh.
Right. I'm hoping it's setting up something.
Yes.
Did they recast Gina?
I don't think they've done that. No.
I'm fearful they will though. That's my please don't.
So shall we delve into it? So we actually had an interview this week where some journalists asked Dave Filoni, so are you going to bring her back? And he's very much a company man politician, right? And so he answered it in a company man politician way, which is there's so many characters we love to play with and blah blah blah. And he didn't answer the question, which is a very political answer. But in and of itself, that says something. It means that the status is undetermined, right? Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
I've always believed that the opportunity for Gina to return will be presented to her whenever. I mean, I know some people say Kathleen Kennedy is never going to leave. She's Nosferatu. She will live forever. She's immortal. In 2773, she'll still be running Lucasfilm, but eventually she's not going to be there. So I believe at that point, they will offer it to her. Whether Gina chooses to come back, she's got a successful life and career now.
That was above them, right? That was above Dave Filoni. That was above Favreau. That was a Kennedy and Disney exec's decision. So, I mean, I think she would work with them again. I mean,
she likes them. I don't think she has any problem with them.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, again, she was very poorly treated. However, what's interesting is the trades, how they presented that interview. The trades are propaganda. I know I work in Hollywood. Trades are propaganda of the system, right? And for the first time, they actually tried to do a balanced portrayal of her. Before, in the past, the trades would call her, she's an anti-Semite because she made a reference to the Holocaust and blah, 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 blah. And she compared people being, a lot of the things that were happening in the lockdowns, which weren't pleasant. She compared those to a lot of things that were happening in Eastern Europe in the 1930s that weren't pleasant, right? And so the trades uniformly condemned her because that's a red line in the industry, right?
Yeah.
That's just a red line in the industry. But for the first time in this response, the trade reporters kind of went along pointing out that the world has changed and we were at a very intense place in those days. For the trades to start using that language,
That's big though. That's a narrative shift there.
The narrative shift. They're being fed, and the trades are being told what to say, right? Yeah, and so they're being told by their editors where things are, where the pulse is of the studios, who's who they serve. And so the fact that they would even talk about, things were pretty intense back then, right?
Wow.
First time they've ever suggested that maybe things might be different now. It's an implication.
Well, I mean, you think about it. She never bent the knee. She never, stopped believing in who she was. And I think even people that were like in the middle kind of respected that about her. You know what I mean? Like they respected that. Okay, she never changed her story. She wasn't a political person. She just felt, you know, those few memes that or pictures that she retweeted meant something to her, and people just assumed what that was. And I just hope everyone, that was a tense time. Everybody was crazy. Everybody. Yeah. And I'm just hoping that's a beautiful sign that maybe we're moving on and beyond that. And like, let's look at people for the character of who they are, not what they tweeted 2 years ago.
So on that point, I said something before we went live. I said I saw something in the episode that I don't think others saw, and maybe I missaw it. So people can obviously go back and watch it right now. We're doing this and write in the chat. No, Cameron, you didn't see it correctly. But I think I saw, because I always watch the opening credit moments and the things, and start off with Darth Vader and the different droids and whatever, and and I didn't see Kylo Ren for the first time in that sequence.
Oh wow.
I'm going to watch it right now.
I look for it every time because I'd always thought that the moment there's a shift internally of power, you won't see Kylo Ren in that.
Wow.
Kylo Ren, because I always look for it. And I was like, oh, there's Kylo Ren again. There's Kylo Ren. It's like Goodwill Hunting. Ben Affleck keeps showing up at the door thinking, he's home, right? So one day he shows up and, Matt Damon doesn't answer the door and we're in a new world, right? And so I was like, there's no Kylo Ren. There's no Kylo Ren. Maybe and forgive me, I may have just not seen it flash by. So if anyone saw it, and maybe you can even screenshot it and send us a screenshot of that.
Yeah.
There's the Kylo Ren right there. I was like, okay, I'm wrong. But if I'm right, that is an intentional edit to the opening sequences they've used for 3 years. That's a choice. It suggests that whoever if that is right, then they don't feel afraid internally to do it. They don't feel afraid of upsetting certain people anymore.
So I guess the question then, if that's the case, then who was Kylo Ren's darling?
Well, I mean, we know it's Miss Kennedy. I mean, that was her. All those were her babies, right? Kylo Ren, Daisy Ridley's character, all that. And if
I didn't see him,
he's not there.
He's not there. And they did it in a tricky way.
He's not there?
No, they did it in a tricky way too.
That's Cameron.
So they go Darth Vader, they go R2D2. The next one's a little confusing to me because it went by quick, but then they do like a stormtrooper, and then they kind of start going with just the Mandalorian characters, but Kylo Ren is out. He's did not have him in that. Wow, what a great catch,
every
man.
One of those.
That's crazy.
I look for it because, again, being in Hollywood, I know that because I've worked on shows where you have to pay somebody to create those opening sequences.
Yeah,
I have as a producer on shows, I'm presented. Here's this opening sequence. You like this one? You like that one? You want to edit this one? I've been in those rooms where you deal with opening sequences. To change an opening sequence is money.
Yep,
it requires choices and money. Someone has to approve it, right? And to edit it requires authorizations, especially one that's consistently been used for 3 years.
Yep,
it's not there. I think
that's big.
To notice it.
Credits to Roman, you caught it early too. So there you go. Someone in our chat had it as well. Yep. The Mando characters
so that's a change, and that's a change that shows that Jon Favreau is not afraid of saying to Ms. Kennedy, "I'm not going to include your character in this anymore. I don't need it anymore."
Ooh.
That's enormous, Cameron, isn't it?
When I jumped up in my seat when the sequence went by because I've been waiting for it for years for it to change, and then I was like, "Oh my God, he's not there!" And then I go to the show.
Can we talk about your Patreon article from a couple of days ago that links to this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's all part of it. I mean, it's all part of the thing. And before we talk about any of this, I think
yes,
I just want to say I understand the incredible pain we've all been through, and it's very hard for people to emotionally accept that things are changing because you're like a dog that's been kicked. You're like an abused dog that's been abused by. So you all see these rescue dogs, right? And they're all skittish and terrified of people, and no matter how much you show them love, it takes them a long time to trust you.
Yep.
You are that abused animal.
Yeah,
so I understand. But there are changes. They're making those changes clearer and clearer visually and in the things that they're saying, and now in the things that are leaking out. And that's where we can transition.
Well, I wanted to say just about the episode that I didn't, it was kind of just there for me. And it was, I think that my experience of this show, this season so far, it's been damaged by some of the other stuff that they've been showing us. And for whatever reason, I watched Andor recently, and I really liked Andor, because I had didn't have any expectations for it, and it felt like EU style Star Wars to me, where there isn't Jedi's, but it didn't have to be. It was sort of normal people on the ground level, and so just the look of this show reminds me so much of like Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
it took me a while to get back, but when I run through it, there was nothing wrong with the episode. The helmet stuff is the big sticking point that it drives me nuts. It's just
what happened with the helmets? Because I'm kind of out of the loop. Like,
okay.
I knew when Disney was going to buy Star Wars, I'm like, this is the end. And I told people, and I went to the celebration in Anaheim, listened to Dave Filoni give his spiel about, I love the Clone Wars. Like, we're not going to keep doing it after Disney, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, good for you. I enjoyed the original Clone Wars series. I like the kind of mix of adult themes and stuff in it. Then he cucks to Disney and does like Rebels, and I'm like, okay, get out. And I did see like the first 2 movies, and I saw Rogue One. I
liked Rogue One quite a bit.
I just
like
no.
on it. And then when they ditched the EU, I mean,
yeah, I mean, when she said there was no books, nothing to reference, like you can't let that ever go. But the Force is female.
But think about this way: she's like Marie Antoinette, in the sense that when Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake,"
yeah,
she wasn't being cruel. She didn't know that French peasants who were hungry didn't have cake.
Right.
They didn't have bread. She said, if they don't have bread, well, they have cake. I mean, I've got bread and cake, and I've got lovely things in my beautiful house. She just didn't know that average people didn't have cake. So Miss Kennedy didn't know there was an EU. I don't think she knew there were books. I don't think there was anything.
Oh God, I know. I went to the library today and I saw this car that had a license plate and it said, it's like long live like Ben Solo or something.
Oh,
It's just like, no, that was the saddest book. Like when he dies of Chewbacca. Oh my. Okay.
Well, good thing is Ben Solo is no longer in the opening credits, people.
Yeah,
yes.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a funny thing you said with Rebels, they had like a nod to Rebels in this episode too, where when they're going through light speed and there's those whales, squid whale things that took Ezra.
Oh God, Ezra! Oh, I hated that character. Oh my God.
So was that like just a little nod to him, or they?
Guys, because my brother-in-law was watching it. I'm at my sister's home right now. I was watching it. My brother-in-law, and he's very much a Rebels geek. He loves that show. And so when they're going through hyperspace, there were hyperspace creatures that Grogu was seeing, and apparently those are all references to Ezra. Yes, with those hyperspace creatures. So they're setting that up, right?
Yeah, that's what took him and Thrawn.
Of everything.
Yeah, that's what took him and Thrawn away. Like that's where they're gone, and that's what took them to either a different place, time, dimension. We don't really know, but it was like either a nod or will there be an Ezra? I think they'll wait to, there'll
be an Ezra spinoff. I guarantee.
Well, it's what's her name? Filoni's favorite pet.
The chick, the Mandalorian chick. I don't know what's her name.
Oh, Ahsoka.
Ahsoka. They'll wait for the Ahsoka show. They'll wait for the Ahsoka show to show that, but I think it was just a nod to it. But it was kind of funny that they added that.
I liked Ahsoka, like in the original Clone Wars one, when great. She goes and she tells off the Jedi Council and she says, like, you're stealing children and you guys aren't, like, any force for good. And I was like, this is the kind of gray area I always wanted to see in Star Wars.
So can I share the story? Right?
Yes.
Story time.
Okay. So one of my great regrets is I was up for the job of head writer of Clone Wars when they were developing the concept years ago.
What?
Nice.
I met the interview process. I got through the interview process and I met with Dave Filoni and one of the top executive producers. This is still when Lucas was running it, right?
Wow.
So this would have been like early 2000s. He made the sale to Disney in 2012. This would have been 2009, 2010. So this is still Lucas Star Wars, and they were developing the Clone Wars idea. I think the movie had already premiered, the animated movie, right? But they were going to develop an series. And so my agents like, hey, are you a Star Wars fan? I was like, oh yeah, I am. They're like, so they put me through the interview process. People liked my scripts. I kept going, and then the big meeting with Dave Filoni, who I was familiar with, right? And I had the meeting, and it was going really well because they're telling this was very exciting. I was basically one of the top 2 or 3 candidates. I'd gotten to that point. Only those upper level people were going to meet Filoni himself, right? And it was also one of the gentlemen from who I recognize his name. He's one of the big executive producers who had been on in some of the prequel films. So he was still working with Lucas. And they told me, whoever gets his job we're gonna take them to go spend 6 months at Skywalker Ranch with George and develop the storyline for this new thing, right? I was like, oh my God, 6 months. staying at Skywalker Ranch and sitting in a room with George Lucas and creating this new mythos. Oh, you better believe I want this job, right?
Yeah.
And so I almost had the job. I mean, I came. I even brought like a visual art book. I think that Dave Filoni had done. I had him autograph it. The interview was very nice. He was very charming. He had his hat and everything, whatever. And everything was going great. And then I blew it. And I blew it in a way that is one of the great ironies, because he ended up doing what I blew. Right.
Oh.
So let me tell you what happened, because Lady Bayfire guided me to it. So what happened? So everything was going great. The meeting was going great. I really thought, man, I might have this job. I might be working with George Lucas in a couple of weeks, right? Everything's great. I'm charming. I'm telling my knowledge. And then I start going on about my personal. I started going up about, well, George, because I'm a student of religion. I've talked about it on our last thing together. We talked about mysticism, religion. I'm a Sufi mystic and Islamic mystic. And I talked about how, and I said to Dave, I said, well, George is very well educated in religion, which is my background, right? He actually studied Buddhism. He studied Zen tradition. He studied the Taoism, that, the force really comes out of Taoism, the yin yang symbol, right? And all that stuff. And I talked about it, and he studied Islamic mysticism. And there's a reason he went to Tunisia and filmed the original Star Wars there, right? He's familiar with Islam. There's a lot of Arabic words, Mustafa and all these are all words based on Arabic, right? And so he had, he had a lot of these Arabic related words, and so he knows Islam and Sufism. And so I started talking about the mystical ideas that were in the show. And I said, one of the things that's within the yin yang symbol that I think that George was setting up, that I would love to explore in this Clone Wars thing you're playing with, is the idea that maybe the Jedi aren't the good guys of the story, because the idea,
I wanted that like so much, because I liked it in high school, and what I always wanted them to do was someone to ask the question and just say, hey, look, the Jedi, they're stealing children, like they're forcing them to go into the thing with force sensitive, like it's just the Jedi order, there aren't any orders of like
so I say all this, and I use the yin yang symbol. I said, look, within Taoism, the yin yang symbol, within the circle of light, or within the half moon of light, there's a point of darkness, and within the dark light, there's a point of light. Because within the idea is that even within darkness there is light, and within light there's darkness. And I think George will want to explore that within the Jedi there is a hint of darkness that is actually going to expand and create their own destruction. Right? Yeah. I think we need to show that. This is the Clone Wars, which you've been hearing about since 1977.
I know, that would have been the best time to show it, if there was some kind of like schism in it. And like one of the things from the Eves that I thought was so fun was the idea that like if you played the tabletop RPG games, and you could play a gray Jedi. I always like that. I love that idea where people were like, I am not going to do this. Or like, I liked in the Clone Wars too, where Ahsoka would start saying like, you guys just serve the politicians. You're basically doing whatever they do. The Senate wants.
This government is corrupt, and you're working with this this justice. So I said all of this with expecting him to go, that's brilliant. Great Jedi exploring the darkness within. And this is like 2009. So then thought it out yet very deeply. And I watched Filoni's body language go from to this.
Really?
I watched his words, his face turns to stone, and I was like, "Oh shit! I just lost his job. Oh shit!
God! I knew that's so sad that something like that would just like immediately just.
But that's his favorite character. His favorite character.
I didn't know what happened. So
unbelievable.
I didn't get the job, and I was heartbroken. But then a few months later, I got this job on the Tron animated series, which if you ever want to do a video on Tron, I'm happy to talk about it. I ran the Tron animated series, right? So I get my next animation job, which is also prestigious, Tron. It's actually, it's on Disney Plus. You can watch it right now. Right? So I'm the head writer of the Tron animated series. So I do become a head writer of something else, another prestigious franchise. And then when I'm there, just a few months after that interview, there was a woman that joins the team on the animation side, and she's come over from Skywalker Ranch. She was working with those guys, and her new job is with Disney on the Tron thing. And so I was like, oh, so you were working with Filoni, and they were doing this Clone Wars thing. Like, oh, and they got their team. They're meeting with George. And I was like, okay, so that's all happening without me, right? And then so I told her what happened. Can I share with you what happened? This is the thing. And she looked at me, and this is what she said. And Mr. Filoni, forgive me, you're watching this. You're like, that's not what happened. I'm just telling you what she said, and so I'm just going to share it, right? So she said, oh, of course, Dave didn't like you. I was like, what do you mean? She said, Lucas is his that's his ticket, right?
Yes.
Lucas is his ticket, and he's prides himself, and again, this is long before Jon Favreau entered the picture, a decade ago, right? He prides himself on being Lucas's right-hand guy, maybe a successor, and he's Lucas's Vader, right?
Yeah.
And he said the fact that you understood the Force on this mystical level, history, religion, that he didn't really know at that time, at least on that level of analysis, threatened him immediately. That's what she said. She said threatened him, threatened him because he said she would never put you in a room with George because George would this guy gets it.
Yeah.
And then you become the buddy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so awful.
And then, but years later, they evolve the show exactly the direction that I said, which is the gray Jedi, and maybe the Jedi aren't heroes, and maybe they're corrupt.
But that's the best part. His favorite character took your idea. He used his favorite character to show that irony in the Jedi, which that's even worse. Like, he took your idea and then made his favorite character the one that proves it.
Yeah, they got there. I'm sure when he got to a place where he was ready for the idea, then it was his idea, and then I'm sure he took the George.
But Hollywood must be like that a lot, where like, oh my God, this guy's a threat. He's
yes, goodness, yes.
My entire journey is I've got a big mouth, I because as a friend of mine said to me once, he's a director, he said, Cameron, the problem is it's too much. You are, because look, and this is gonna sound like self-aggrandizing, but let me just say, none of this has helped me. So he said, you're highly educated, you went to Ivy League schools, you have 4 degrees, because I have like a JD and an MBA and MFA. You got 4 degrees, you write incredibly fast, you've been nominated for Emmys and on Golden Globes, whatever, and you're a brown Muslim guy. This is too much.
Too much. Check too many boxes.
What they want on any level. You threaten them on every level. If you're a white dude, it's too much. And then you're the brown dude. That's even worse. And then you're the Muslim guy, you don't like religion. That's even worse. He's like, it's too much. And that's been my experience. Like, the moment they were like, oh, you're really good at this, you're done.
Yeah. You just said it to the wrong person. You should have waited that moment you met George, and then you go, bam.
And you drop it.
I'm this person. I'm an enthusiastic, honest person, and that has not helped me. It has not helped
I
me.
know
exactly.
Cameron. It's either like you're a threat, or they see it and they're like, "Oh, look it! I can just tap all your energy, and I can just use you to the ground and whatever." Like,
It's sad because, like, talking about what you just thought about, it makes it deep. It makes it something you want to watch, because I always thought, I was in, I don't remember the year, late 90s was the prequels. So I was in college, and that's what I assumed George was trying to tell us. That the corruption of the Jedi was their disconnection from the Force. That's what caused that disconnection from the Force.
Their arrogance. Their
the arrogance of it.
Self-analysis. They're unwilling to look at their traditions about what they were doing, and their snobbery about thinking they understood, like, that suppressing all emotion is the way to go.
Right, not having love.
Luke showed them is you can use emotion in the service of the Force. Loyalty to family. You can be attached to family. Yes, it can lead you to the dark side, but can also lead you to light. Attachment has value, right? And they had created it was a binary world. The Jedi are all about detachment, and the Sith are all about passion. And the truth is somewhere in between. That's what makes us human, right? And I was trying to.
Didn't we get that in Return of the Jedi? See, that's what bothered me about last season of The Mandalorian, is that the Return of the Jedi showed us that love can save you from the dark side, and the love of a son was really what connected with Vader, that he was willing to die. Luke was ready to die for his father. That's why he came back to the light, Anakin. And what they did in Mandalorian last season was they made Luke go back to you have to choose. You can't think about him anymore. It's either this or that, or you're out. And I thought that was a disservice to the character of Luke. I mean, there's been a lot of disservices.
They've disserviced Luke. They're trying to bring it back. So they rewound that far back, okay? Yeah. Or at least he's still a hero. They're just trying to unwind this tape. Not that far back.
They lost me at Blue Milk. I'm like, I'm out. Like, whatever that was, I was like, okay, no.
Oh, it was the green.
Speaking of heroes.
Green milk.
Whatever.
Speaking of heroes.
Mexican Iron
Man is here. Thank you so much for $9.99. I like the VIP guests. Go Team Brown Muslim guys. Absolutely. Thank you for coming, Mike. Mike's been a lot of help for me behind the scenes too.
Yeah,
Mike's
and,
awesome.
and Mike is open about it, very proud of it. He's also part of my Sufi order. We have the same spiritual teachers. So yeah, brown Muslim guys, here we go. Mexican, Pakistani guys, same Sufis. Yeah.
Sweet.
So thank you for that very much, Mike. And also, we have 32 Flavors of Nick Weiser is here.
Love him.
Hey, Nick Weiser. I was on
One
his
of the
show
best.
last night, Toxic Tuesdays, talking about John Wick. Yeah, great show. Mr. Tickletongue is here. And Michelle from Force of Light is here.
Oh, hi,
Oh, Michelle. So she must have come for you, Cameron. She came for you, Cameron, but that's okay. I'll pretend she's here for me.
It's okay.
I can pull that off.
Lovely ladies.
Great chat here tonight. I just want to say yes. We will.
Oh, I was like, what just
always
happened?
try to bring it back to Kodar for you.
Yeah, I know.
So
By Sealed Republic, yes. That was a good video game.
So, yeah,
brilliant game.
So I mean, look, the reality is, I would not. I mean, I didn't survive at Disney. I ended up halfway through the Tron animated series. I got fired because I was this person, right? Whenever I saw problems, I saw internal politics, I pointed them out, and I said, "This person is screwing things up." They're like, "No, you don't. That's not how Disney works. You have to backstab the person this way. That's how it works, right? That's not how I work." And I got fired 6 months into it because I wouldn't play that game. So I wouldn't have survived. The world that Dave Filoni, he understands how. Look, he's a corporate man. He knows how to play.
Plays it well.
People were upset when he was like speaking at a women's conference a few years ago and started saying all the Ray is the greatest female character. You know what?
You're right, though.
That's why he has a job. He's doing what the boss wants.
Yep.
He's doing what the boss wants. That's why he has a job. That's why I'm not working there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question about that then. What about Favreau? Because he seems like, okay, he kind of didn't do much when, the whole Gina Carano thing happened. But he's also a guy, though, who bucks, like he bucked against Feige, and that's why he left, is he the type that will stand up for himself? Like,
absolutely. Look, I have, and this actually began my journey on YouTube 2 years ago when I came out, I think Jeremy Griggs' channel, Geeks and Gamers, a long time ago, and I mentioned that I have a good friend who is one of Favreau's inner circle. Like he's been one of his crew that he's taken from The Lion King and all these movies he's done, and been with him for 15, 20 years. So very close, literally one of his right hands, and so. Before the pandemic began, he and I had lunch together, and he told me then, and this was before I'd come onto YouTube or anything else, and while we were also angry we're all screaming about The Last Jedi still in 2020, right? And he said, John hates these sequels, right? He hates these movies. He hates them. He thinks they're not Star Wars. He said this to me, don't even know. We're having lunch. John thinks they're garbage and they're not Star Wars. And what he told me, and again, this is what him telling me, John Favreau didn't tell this to me. He said to me then, well, John, when he saw The Last Jedi, he was like, what the hell is this? John reached out, called Bob Iger himself and said, you guys are on the wrong path. I can help you get this on the right path.
Yeah.
You're going down a path I cannot follow.
Exactly. But he's always been proactive. He inserted himself. According to my friend, I'm sure maybe they already had a conversation, but at some point he aggressively went after this and I can fix this for you. Yeah. And he's very smart. He is more risk taking than Dave is because he's has the freedom of being an independent filmmaker. Mm-hmm. Dave is a company employee for 20 years, right? And if he loses that job, that's it for him, right? Whereas if Favreau is pushed out, well, he's got a successful directing career. He's got 20 other things, right? So he has the ability to be in both worlds. That's why he's been able to push. That's why maybe he was able to get Kylo Ren out of the credits finally, right? That's why he was able to get Luke back in, allegedly, and I believe it, that Kennedy didn't know that until it was premiered. She's like, what the hell is this? What's Hamill doing here? You filmed Hamill without telling me, right? He has the balls to do stuff like that, right? But he didn't have the ability to save Gina because that's the red line.
Yes.
Anything related to the Holocaust in Hollywood,
of course,
it's a red line for the industry, and it's an emotional red line. He's like, nope, I'm out. I can't do anything about this. Right? It's too much. I'll just
I get it.
Feel the wound.
I get it. He brought back at least the practical feel of Star Wars, which is nice. So, yeah, he's amazing. I mean, look what he did with Iron Man. The first couple phases of the MCU was his direction. Like it literally for me, from an outsider looking in, it was him, Perlman, a couple others, and then
Joss,
now you're
us too, even though we're mad at Joss now.
Well, but it was him. I mean, whoever he is as a human being, that first Avengers movie kicked ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good. I mean, I missed that. Like, I stopped watching it about like the third iteration of the Marvel movies, but like the first ones were good. I mean, Captain America, like that was awesome, and
Yep.
Well, they
I
were
miss
still playing with their toys then. They were still playing with the toys,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Yeah.
you know,
Now it's a machine.
and Feige hadn't bought into his own myth yet.
Right.
For Gina too, I think people need to understand that for her, like I followed her career long before this happened. I was a big fan of her as a fighter, and she's super hot. Obviously, she's my intro for a reason. She's kind of like the perfect woman, basically. So back in the day when like she doesn't need Disney, she doesn't need Disney money. Her family is very wealthy. She's done very well for herself on her own. But her dad won the Super Bowl with the Cowboys. They have big Vegas casino ties. Like she does not need them, so she will only go back if she wants to go back. She won't go back on her knees, that's for sure. She'll go back on her 2 feet by her choice, and so there's no way that she's going to go back any other way than to bring that character to the people the way we want to see her and the way she wants to play her.
No.
And it is possible, and who knows what's going to happen. That's why I don't try to predict it. You know, I don't claim to know Gina. You know, I've had a couple of DM interactions with her over the years on like Twitter and whatever, and she's very gracious and very friendly. But I can't claim to be her friend. I don't know her personally, and I would never ask her like, "What are your thoughts?" Right? You know, I did get the vibe from that. You know, she was very hurt by how she was treated. I did get that vibe from a couple of very small conversations I had with her on DM. And she has every right to be hurt.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What she does with that.
Yeah. I just stalk her online, so that's there's no DMs, unfortunately. No, with Gina. Yeah, it's
2 degrees of separation, 2 degrees at least. So we're good.
Here's the random thing, and she never admitted it. I did send her one DM she never responded to, which is I was sitting at home. I live at this lovely home in Santa Monica. I'm not there right now. I'm in Pennsylvania. Lovely home in Santa Monica by the beach. And one day I'm sitting. And I'm like on the phone talking to my mother and just looking out at the beach from the window. And this tall, stunning, athletic woman walks right by my window and looks exactly like Gina Carano. Like it's a big jogging path in front of my home, right? And I was like, oh, because I was going to call out the windows, Gina, is that you? But she walked by before I could do it, right? And then I immediately sent her, Gina, did you just walk by my home in Santa Monica? She never responded to that. She might have been freaked out. She might have been like, is this dude stalking me, right? Because she may very well have just been jogging on the path in front of my home. She's like, how does this guy know that? I was like, no, you just happened to jog by my window as Gina Carano, right? She's a very distinctive looking figure. I cannot imagine that there's a lot of people that look like Gina Carano, even in LA. I've never seen her.
Right? Yeah, she has a distinctive look.
Yeah. So God,
She does. And to Lady B, to answer your question from before about the helmets, Mandalorians can never take their helmets off ever. Well, and it's so frustrating. Like the whole
it's that cult.
If you're part of this weirdo cult, right. Other Mandalorians think is nutty.
I know, which is weird because if you go back to like the prequels, that's like Jango Fett does.
Yeah.
And you see how the clones look like him, and you're like,
yeah, you're right. And they talk about this because he is Din Djarin, this character in The Mandalorian, is part of a sort of a fringe religious cult, a fundamentalist cult that believes that follows the religion of Mandalore, and they don't take off their helmets. And the other Mandalorians are like, "You're out of your mind."
You guys why though? Man, they're like bounty hunters. Like
it adds mystique. I understand.
I mean, could she turn out? Could the blacksmith turn out to be the evil one of this season? Like, I feel like they're gonna come to blows. Like it's gonna. I
feel like Cameron knows.
No, I don't know.
But it does feel like, I mean, it's a cult. Like, how can he be like? How can they make this a good thing? That's what I'm saying. It's a cult. Like, you know,
he may very well do the heroic things he's supposed to do this season to cleanse himself of his sin of taking off his helmet, and they still don't accept him. Who knows? But you know, we don't know. I mean, who knows how it's going to go? It's it adds, but one of the things they've captured in this is something that Lucas had no problem with because he uses the word in the original Star Wars, religion.
Yeah,
you know, the Force is a religion, and you know that's actually the genius of it. Like think about 1977, you've got this thing, and you've got Darth Vader. He's a scary, like you think he might be a robot. You don't know what he is, and then he's a scary bad guy who's breathing, and then that defining moment where the admiral mocks him, right? Admiral Mahdi, I think, says, "Mocks, you haven't been able to use a force to find these the plans, right? You know, this mystical power that you've got." And he comes and he force strangles him, and we've never seen that before. And he force strangles him with his mind, but he says the pivotal thing: "I find your lack of faith disturbing."
Yep.
And
maybe that's the thing now is like we can't talk about religion and you can't have any kind of spirituality in anything at all anymore, so they don't want to like make it
but that's the thing. Star Wars has always been the word.
I
religion.
know, and it's like,
And
come
the
on,
fact that
guys.
Vader is religious. They make it Vader is a deeply religious guy.
Yes, very religious.
That they put out. He's like, you're going to insult my religion. I'm going to teach you. I mean, you didn't expect that in a character, right? The science show, and that's because again, Lucas studied religion and understood.
Yeah, that's like the whole like hero journey of Luke is that he has to have faith, and he finds his faith in Dagobah with Yoda, and he's like, you have to believe you can do this. You have to believe to achieve and get the X-wing out of the swamp, and that's like
you don't believe that is why you fail. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the whole like energetic thing of like self-belief and like. I don't know. We're not at the woo part of the stream yet, so I'll save it.
And Rey is floating with like 500 boulders, and she's just like flips over, like, oh, this is so boring.
I know. I hate that. There's no progression there. There's no learning. Nothing is earned. It's just like, bam, you have power. Bam, you have power. She do everything. It's so boring.
Written by people that don't understand religion, right? I don't know Mr. Johnson. I would not be surprised if Rian Johnson turned out to be an atheist or at least a very aggressive agnostic, that I don't believe in anything I can't touch with my own hands, which is the standard mantra in Hollywood amongst writers and directors. Actors can be open about their religious beliefs, but writers and directors, especially writers, love to show off we're too intellectually superior to believe in all this. Right? And that's like a mantra again. It's almost like a social status thing. I'm smarter than all these dumb religious people, right? And I've often shocked people by being the writer in the room goes, well, the existence of God is self-evident. What are you talking about? And they're like, what? Someone said that? It's like, what? I was like, what? You can't, you can't see it. Are you blind? And they don't know how to respond to that, right? Yeah. And so, but that's the kind of thing. If somebody doesn't understand religion, will misrepresent it. Same thing that happened in the horrific movie Prometheus, right? I mean, it's a garbage movie, right? It's not just it's garbage as objectively.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It also messes up the alien mythos, but what offended me the most was it was somehow some kind of commentary on religious faith written by Damon Lindelof, who clearly has none, and he doesn't understand why would people believe in God. And
I know, like the whole thing with Elizabeth Shaw, and they're always mocking her, and then the whole thing.
But she's also an idiot.
Actually, it's like a movie that I like, and yeah.
So I mean, but that's again, Mr. Lindelof. Who I'm guessing is very likely to be one of the standard Hollywood, there's no God, I'm smarter than everybody else. I'm guessing that's no evidence not to believe that's true. And look what he does with it. And, the poor thing with Ridley Scott is a brilliant filmmaker, but he's also been said openly in his interviews, I'm an atheist. And so he's also got that materials worldview. So when given a bad script by Damon Lindelof, he didn't have the inner wisdom to see that the script didn't work.
Right.
He was on the same place intellectually. So it was a movie that was written from here and not
seems
from
like
here.
Many of them are, though. It seems like many of them are in Hollywood. I wonder why that is, that a large portion of Hollywood today's Hollywood seems to be a spiritually corrupt. Like not, and even close to atheism. Like the idea that
they're open.
They are. I mean, I don't
it's
know
very
personally.
Secularism everywhere, and very like
they're materialists. I mean, you can be secular and religious. You can say, I keep my religious beliefs to myself. That's fine. They are materialistic in their worldview. There's nothing beyond what the five senses tells you. Which is silly because as artists, I'm sure everyone on this panel is an artist in some form, right? And you are channeling something bigger than you when you create. Right?
I know, and they cheat people of faith. They look down on us like so much. Like you're like, oh, it's like like the Obi-Wan says, oh, you're hokey religion or whatever. Like
that's exactly Han Solo represents that. But even Han Solo eventually comes.
Han Solo.
May the Force be with you when he says it at the end of the movie, right?
Yep.
He's been convinced, right?
Yep.
And so.
Yeah.
So
I've never
end that conversation.
I've never heard it said that way, Cameron. But the way you just said that about connecting with an audience here instead of here, how important do you think that any faith, whatsoever it is, to get an audience to believe in the story you're telling? How important is that as a writer to have that connection?
Well, again, when I say faith, I'm just talking about faith as an experience, right? I'm not talking about religious ideas or dogmas. You can have any belief you want. Faith is an experience that there is something beyond the five senses that our soul can experience internally that cannot necessarily be put into words, right? And that is a common human experience. Because we internally experience it, we share it with others, and in the process, religions develop for us to be able to communicate and share that experience, right? But I believe it is inherently programmed into the human DNA. And so you have to actually actively shut down, or at least try to tamper down your inner experience of that by using your mind and telling yourself it's not real. Your own experiences aren't real. Your own, because everyone, it's like when, whenever someone says to me, whenever someone's aggressive about something, it's always fighting themselves. They're like, I don't believe in UFOs. I don't believe in aliens. And I think you're crazy for believing it.
Right.
One time there was this like silver disc flying over my house. And you actually do believe in it, but you just don't want to face it, right? And so that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a conflict, right? Every atheist I've ever met is fighting themselves.
Yep.
Because when the moment you're talking, I was like, so you've never had a strange coincidence that you can't explain? Like, you never thought, you're thinking about some friend of yours from college from 20 years ago, and suddenly they call you out of nowhere at exactly the moment. You've never had that experience that defies the laws of probability? Of course they've had those experiences. But no, it's not. The odds of it being coincidence are bigger than the odds of the universe. Coming.
Amen.
I mean, it's
Amen.
insane. But they're in denial because the universe. In Islam, we have a verse in the Quran that says God will show you the signs on the horizons and within yourselves. So external to you, all the way to the end of the horizon, are signs of God's existence, and within yourself. You have to deny everything. You have to be in a constant state of like, nope. Nothing there. Nope, nothing there. You have to be in that state.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm not preaching any specific religious ideology.
No, I get it.
Experience of something bigger than the five senses is inherent to the human condition.
Yeah, like what is it that like line from the Gospel of Thomas? It says, and Jesus said, "Let those who have eyes see, or something, or ears to hear, hear."
Those who have ears to hear, yeah. And the Gospel of Thomas is incredible. It's the most.
I love that. That's like my favorite part, but it's not part of the Bible officially. So
I think there are a couple of verses in the official New Testament where he does say, "Let
It
those,
is close to that, yeah.
Yeah,
there's some like
and those. So, but I mean,
the Gnostic Gospels are good though.
It's all good. It's all
yeah,
good.
everyone
can believe what they want. I'm just saying that the inner experience of it is very real, and all art comes from it. So when the reason actors, like a lot of actors, get involved in weirdo cults and stuff, it's because as an actor, you have to channel through your whole body this other reality, right? To act, you literally become somebody else. It's a form of complete possession, and so you experience another reality. So you can't deny it. It's very hard for an actor to be a materialist. That there's nothing, because they experience it in their body, right? And but a writer can, because a writer can channel words that they don't even know where the hell the words are coming from. It's just like, oh, something's happening to me, the muse, right? And these incredible words are coming out. Who's writing it?
Like, what?
And then you convince yourself you did it. It channels through you, and then your mind tells you did it. But you're like, well, but that's not true. So the writers lie to themselves because
they deny themselves.
They'll hide behind the intellect, because that's not what's creating. The intellect isn't creating anything.
Right.
God, there's a spiritual feeling there. There's some kind of drive. There's a drive outside of you in the ether that like somehow gets like transmutated through your pen onto the page.
Look, I can't imagine how a writer can't believe in God when they create a universe. Like, just step back and think about God created he's writing down like you. He's an author of a universe. Like, you just created your own micro universe. Maybe just think of it in the same sense. Like, even if you're not a religious person, in a spiritual thing, you are creating a universe. So why couldn't somebody else be creating us?
Because the thing is this,
that's
especially amongst writers.
Yeah.
The problem is because part of it is just to fit in with the crowd, because if everyone's saying something stupid, you got to say something stupid to fit in, right? The Dave Filoni method of survival.
I was just about to say.
Right? It works, right?
Yep.
But the other thing is because most of them have the level of understanding of religion that religious fanatics do. The guys won't take off the helmets, right? Religious fanatics and what I call the aggressive atheists. When someone says they're atheist, there are Buddhists who are atheists, because they say, well, I don't think in terms of a God, but I think in terms of consciousness. So they're Buddhists or atheists. You can be a religious atheist, but I'm talking about the aggressive materialistic atheist who says there's nothing.
How do you believe that? I mean, God, you never had an experience like anything.
Yeah, the consciousness isn't real. That there's all the projection of even Buddhists will tell you consciousness is real, even if they don't talk about God, right? And so a materialistic atheist, their understanding of religion is always at the level of a religious fanatics. It's like, people say to me, you think this old man on a throne throwing out lightning bolts controls the universe? I'm like, no, what are you talking about, right? And so the Sufi answer when someone says, I'm an atheist. I don't believe any of this stuff. So like our response is, oh, don't worry. I don't believe in the God you don't believe in either.
No.
Yeah. You don't believe in the old man on the road doing this. I mean, I don't believe Thor is throwing down hammers. That's
Right.
what this is. Right. And so great, we're on the same page.
Right.
That's not real. So let's get to what is reality. And that's the scary part for people who have so dwelt on the level of taking myth literally and not understanding that myth does not mean falsity.
Right.
Myth is meaningful
like
storytelling.
Yeah, like I just was thinking when we were talking about like how when you have like movies are kind of a spiritual thing, and that just reminded me of like Triple R about like there are a lot of like religious images and like quotes in that movie, not quotes like literal quotes, but like
Feeling.
scenes and imagery and stuff like that they put in the movie that I don't even understand because it's not my religion, but like still watching for me was still the same kind of like spiritual connection to the story, because it's like Joseph Campbell's kind of stuff where you're experiencing something that is like very culturally like relevant to like everyone because it speaks to greater human experience, and that's what we are as writers, and that's what we do. And when you lose sense of that and you start getting down these sort of like nihilistic, like I don't even know how to describe it, like materialistic, like nothing matters, everything needs to be just like deconstructed, and like there's no hope or anything, like it's I hate that stuff.
These people like this, there's a sadism in that, just like that is a sadistic movie. The people who have this worldview, they don't actually believe it themselves, even though they say they do. They want to use it as a cudgel on you. They want to take away your happiness. They want to.
I really feel like it's more of a reflection of somebody else's misery and sadness, and it's like I am so like unhappy in my own experience of life that this is just my projection of the world on everyone.
Right. That's a really good way of putting it too. I always loved George R. R. Martin, who I believe is an atheist. I believe he has said he's
probably
an atheist.
He's probably the atheist that is talking about Thor. That's what he's projecting.
Right, exactly. But he still talks about like the best stories are the heart and conflict, and a lot of times the heart and conflict is that that looking for something greater than themselves. And to me, that is spirituality. Like I don't know. It always makes me laugh.
Well, I mean, again, the unfortunate thing that we've gone through. This is something that I think is specifically Western and European phenomenon. This was a historical phenomenon that happened specifically because the history of Europe and then America was a little different from the rest of the world with regard to spirituality.
Right.
And again, this is not as. And please, my Catholic friends, please do not think I'm attacking Catholicism. I'm attacking a historical moment. So there was a historical moment when the European Catholic Church had a. I think most Catholics would say an incorrect understanding of the Catholic faith, where they're expressing knowledge and science, and telling Galileo and Copernicus to shut up, right? And so that I'm certain I think we all agree Jesus would have been like, tell the truth about things.
Right.
I know, that's why they don't like the Gospel of Thomas, because it literally just says, no, we don't do this. Like, the answers are within you.
Exactly. But there was an historical institutional process for several centuries where information was being suppressed, and science and knowledge and discovery was being suppressed, which led to the Dark Ages, as we think of that. The Dark Ages of Europe were just the Dark Ages of Europe. The Islamic world was like, the Islamic world was like, here's math science. We're developing cameras in the 9th century. We're doing all this stuff. We're figuring out how the human body works. And you guys are the Dark Ages because you're not washing your hands and you're sitting in filth, okay? And you don't want to read and write. Okay, we're gonna do this stuff. The rest of the world, the Islamic world, the Chinese world, Indian world, and also what was happening in the Americas, right? The Mayan cultures and all this, had no problem having science and religious faith working together to seek knowledge. This was a specifically historical political situation in Europe over a few centuries where knowledge was being controlled and suppressed. And so then when they had the scientific revolutions, their anger at the religious institutions that had suppressed them made them throw the baby out with the bathwater. So they blamed God for holding back knowledge, so God has to be thrown out, right? And
now we have the religion of scientism. So,
and it's also with our.
It's all religion.
And you know what? Bringing this up though, archaeology. They didn't want anything to do with the Bible anymore. Where it's kind of funny because now you look at Graham Hancock and all these great new I don't know what you want to call them because they're not archaeologists, but they're
they're revisionist historians, and I think
Yes.
they're largely accurate.
right, and I do too. And
They're asking questions, which is
but-
important.
What
Right,
they're saying
looking at
is
data that
don't.
they're ignoring. Yes.
But they're like saying, don't deny these myths, these stories that are in the Bible, that are in different civilizations, because these myths are their foundation is in truth. The flood. Everybody has 100. There's 100 different flood stories.
Every culture has it, and it's
Every
the same
culture.
Story. It's the same story.
Right.
God or the gods punish an evil world
Right.
by flooding it, and then save one group of people on a boat. Every culture has a story.
Right.
And
then
isn't it weird that every culture does? And so you're
Yeah.
thinking maybe something like that did actually happen, and there were different people that came and saved a bunch of these
It's a
people.
race memory. It's
Yes.
a race
Yeah.
memory.
Yes, I'm with. Oh man, we could talk about that for
Well,
hours.
the great
We
thing is
do.
we've now transitioned to the paranormal stuff that Zach wanted to talk
Yes.
about. at the beginning.
Yeah.
Woo, woo,
Now-
woo,
now
woo.
we're
What's it? Okay, let's go.
And we're into it because that's why this gets. Why do we care?
It was
so
a
much?
good transition.
Yeah, but it's a natural transition because why do we care about Star Wars so much? Because it is the modern myth.
Yep.
It is a
Mhm.
modern myth that people of all religions can love and identify with. There's a Muslim on this panel. There's Christians on this panel. I'm sure there's other identities. Certainly in the chat, there's all kinds of religious beliefs.
Mhm.
We're all united in our love for Star Wars, or at least what George Lucas did with Star Wars.
Yep.
We were so angry because why? What they did, what Disney did, was they attacked this universal myth that George Lucas had put out in the world that united people of every
Yes.
culture and religion.
Yes.
all-
Yes. Oh my god.
That's right. And the chat is 100% with us on that. And so I wanted to bring this up to start with only because, well, I think it's interesting, but also this is where we kind of ended our last show. Was you were talking about the Qasem caves and
Yes.
the 400,000 years worth of civilizations that have resided in that area, and
Levant,
the
yeah.
link to shamanistic cultures in North America, and how it all kind of, there's a lot of connections here. So I thought I would bring this up to get us over to that track, because like that is they were using fire here to cook. They've been here way longer than people would ever have imagined, and there's similar sites all over the rest of the world. They're now finding to where there's also the beginning of shamanistic culture and deities, and the possibility of well, I don't know if we don't go there quite yet, but of travel.
Oh, there has
Oh,
to
yeah.
travel.
But all religions are based on this. I mean, even if every religion is based on travel to another dimension, every
Oh
single
god, yeah,
one.
seriously.
Every one of them, the Buddha experiences enlightenment of the Bodhi tree and goes through all the dimensions of the universe to achieve it, right? All the Hindu gods come from another dimension, right? Moses goes up to the mountain and converses with the god, which is another dimension.
Yeah, and like you think of the whole story of Moses, because that's where I left off in my Bible reading, and I'm like, this is basically like two different rival, like high technology factions fighting each other with different advanced weapons. Like there's biological warfare in that story. There's like all sorts of stuff. Like
giant.
I was just like, what?
The interesting thing is
Giants? Yeah, giants. Oh,
Goliath is a giant. In both the Bible and the Quranic version of events that happen in ancient sort of Palestine, you've got they both say that the Philistines, who are actually a Greco-Roman group, at least we know archaeologically, had giants amongst them. Both the Quran says that, the Bible says that, and people say, it's just mythological. But there's been history of people finding huge bones throughout history. And
I mean,
know
look
it
at the
totally
Americas.
goes in those books. Yeah,
The Americas.
there
I
were
mean,
giants. There was another race of human beings amongst us.
yes, and we have proven that with in Australia with we call them the Hobbit people, where they were a smaller, hominid.
Yeah, I mean, they're another branch of humanity. They probably branched off earlier than the break between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals.
Neanderthals, exactly.
So they are human, but they're actually a different branch. They're not exactly. I know the ones you're talking. They're not exactly Homo sapiens sapiens.
Right.
They're something else, but they're still human.
They're still human, right? What I find great is that archaeologists, the new wave of archaeologists, are actually looking at these sites that people have been probably, they thought that the story was over, and what they did was dig a little bit deeper, because what we've come to find out is that they say, oh, this in Lebanon was built by the Romans. Well, yeah, they were the last ones there.
Built on top of it, yes.
Right, we found their junk go a little deeper and you might find somebody else's junk.
Yeah,
Because that's how we figure out who was there.
Talk about the great temple there that they can't
Yes.
figure out how to move today. Like,
Yes.
they can't move it with a single technological
Oh God, no.
train today. How do they? I mean, don't tell me some dudes put it on a log, because every time they try
I know, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, you're laughing at religious people, but you really expect people to believe that crap. Like, come on.
Well, then again, look at the Bible. A lot of stories in the Bible were about chanting and going around the walls of Jericho, chanting. It's vibrational
warfare.
stuff that they were using. Just because we went the route of the combustible engine and fossil fuels doesn't mean they didn't go the route of residence.
The Sufis talk about this a lot. Within the Islamic tradition, Sufis say human beings have devolved. That, they say this is no great accomplishment, that you can talk to people on this technological device all over the world. They said our ancestors could do this with their minds.
Yeah, I know. I've delved
You
into
have to use this because you've lost this.
Yep.
You've forgotten how to do it. You don't need this to communicate with somebody. You can do it telepathically. You just don't know how to anymore.
Right.
It's inherent to the human condition. And our ancestors could do these things. Right?
In all different areas too. Like you were saying before, all different areas of the world said that. You have Buddhism, you have different, if you get to a certain level of consciousness, you open up those pathways to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cameron, have you ever heard of Dolores Cannon?
Of course, I've got several of her books.
Oh yeah, me too. I have to read them, but yeah, she talked about that with doing like past life regression stuff, and they were said, yeah, it was like there was all this high technology, and people did do that, and it's so interesting. And I think the interesting thing that comes out, because I've listened to her recordings on YouTube, and one of the things that was interesting to me was that across all of the different people she talked to, like the stories are so similar that you can't help that, like, maybe you don't completely buy this, but like, hey, how do you explain the same things happening over and over again and the people saying the same things, kind of like all the flood myths? How do you explain that?
Well, how do you explain these children?
Things, yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt because she was talking to you, but how do you explain these children that remember how they died, remember their wives, remember their brothers, and it's true. Like they find out that there's that one boy. Yeah, the reincarnation is something that you can't deny with children from the age of, it's like 2 to about 5 they'll remember. And this one little boy, he believed he was a fighter pilot. Remember?
Oh yeah,
dying.
I remember that story.
Oh my God, that story! Like I'm getting shivers right now.
I know that story they talk about, and he told how he died and all of that.
What's the
Yeah,
story,
and he
Scott?
talked
What's
to
the
the
story?
family too.
Yeah, he talked to this little boy. Remembers being a fighter pilot. I believe it was World War II.
Yeah.
He remembers how he died. He remembered his mother. He remembered his hometown. He just kept telling his parents, "Oh no, and I forget the fighter pilot's name, but he kept saying,
like he knew what his name had been, and
Yes.
he knew all the details of his life. He knew
Everything.
like how he had died, where he was, and he kept saying his parents, and parents thought he was just seeing something on TV, and then he just was so consistent in telling the story that they started writing it down, and I think they ended up looking and finding this was a real person, and I think in the end they actually met the family.
They met like a sister, I believe, the sister of the pilot that died, and was able yes, that was our mother's name. That was where we lived. And this, it's a child. Like he was not lying.
I'm going to blow your mind even more. Scott, because I'm going to give you a Sufi perspective of reincarnation that's going to flip it.
Okay,
right?
please.
That's going to give you another layer.
Okay.
So we Sufis, we actually never talk about it. Most mystical traditions, even in the Gospels,
Right.
people are saying to Jesus, they say, are you Elijah returned? Right. So they had a concept of reincarnation in the first century, of Judea at the time, right? So that's it's a worldwide concept. But the Sufi is going to say, let's peel the onion even deeper. In reality, the very idea of reincarnation still keeps us within the realm of matter and time, that there is progression of time, that you died in 1945 in a plane crash. Your soul went through a linear process of rebirth in 1995. You were reborn as a child, right? So there's a linear process of time. And the Sufis will say, that's all great, but that's all part of the illusion, right? There is no time at all in the realm of the divine. And so it's all happening at once, and it's all happening at one place instantaneously.
I love that.
And so the Sufis,
That is so crazy.
the Sufis will say the experience of reincarnation will not deny any of those stories.
Right.
Will not deny any of those, because those are documented experiences. But they'll say, on the deepest level, all of us are just one soul that's reappearing in different faces. And so that child that remembered all of those events is not necessarily the soul of a being in 1945 that transmigrated through time.
It's
and
his soul.
appeared. What it is they're part of the universal consciousness.
Oh, beautiful.
They're able to remember all of it. And it is that's why you can actually, the other phenomenon that some people who get a little obsessed with reincarnation say is, well, because everyone says, well, I was Cleopatra. I was like, how many Cleopatras? I mean,
right.
I was Marilyn Monroe. I was, she came back 75 times, right? In the same, in one generation, right? Because everyone's that, right? And it's like, well, yeah, that's right. Because anyone, if you go deep into meditation, deep into vibrational work, mystical work, you too will actually be able to vividly remember every one of those events as if you experienced it, right?
So you're saying not just you are one soul through time and you're a different one. We're all the same soul.
We're all one soul.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I read this book by, oh God, who was it? It was called Aspects, and I think the guy never finished the work, but it was kind of like there were like different aspects of a singular like divine thing. I think that's where he's going with that, but that is really interesting to think, because I've always looked at like, because I'm more of a pagan, and I've looked at like the way that the kind of pagans experience stuff, and it seems to be like a lot of times it's like there is like an overarching kind of spirit thing, and then there's different aspects or different like manifestations of like the different gods who are kind of like all different aspects of a certain thing. So I always thought that was interesting too.
Egyptian, I mean, they kind of do the same thing, you know. Osiris becomes I'm Hoth. I'm blanking at the moment, but he becomes his own son.
As another being, yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's reborn
as
Osiris,
his own son. There's Horus and there's Osiris.
Horus, thank you. I blanked.
Osiris killed, resurrects his father. So, So all of that, what all of that reveals, the Sufis will say, all that reveals is that time itself is not linear, right?
Oh.
And we're not.
That gets to me. That's
it's a lot. It overwhelms the brain.
It's beautiful though. It's a beautiful idea.
That is so interesting.
A Hindu mystic, Ramana Maharshi, who's considered one of the great Hindu mystics of modern time, right? And that was his actually entire message. He said, let's get past reincarnation. Because when you still think of reincarnation, you're still trapped in the cycle of birth and rebirth. When you remember that you're
still stuck on the wheel of time, Cameron.
When you remember that you are God,
right?
God does not exist within time and space and doesn't have a specific one form. It's all form. When you remember that,
we're all God. I know that's kind of like
become infinite.
What's beautiful is you've told me this
reincarnation. You're stuck in linear limitation,
right? And what's beautiful is you have told me this infinite times now.
Yeah.
You have told me this infinite times now. If you really want to think of it that way,
I'm just telling yourself that you and I are the same thing. We're just talking to ourselves, right? Beautiful. And so, but I just want to. That's not to disrespect anyone for whose religious belief reincarnation is central. I'm saying that another way to look at it,
right?
Because any Hindu mystic, and any Buddhist will tell you the purpose of life is not to come back to this world. The purpose of life is to transcend it, right?
Yes.
And so the journey is not to come back, because a lot of the New Agers in America were like, well, I'll be back, 10,000 more times. It's like, no Hindu mystic
you missed the point.
No, that's not the age. You want to transcend, which is kind of like what Dolores Cannon talks about. Like, there's different like levels of consciousness, and they kind of call it like dimensions. And I think that's probably kind of not the best word to describe it, but anyways, yeah, they talk about different states of being, and that sometimes people would choose to come back. And oh my God, there's so much to talk about, and it's so interesting, and it makes you really think about yourself. And I think what's really interesting, at least for me, when I read that or like was listening to it, was that you could listen to something like that, and it's a humbling experience because you're like, oh my God, I'm so small, but at the same time, it's extremely comforting to know that you're all, every person is part of some huge thing, and everyone is important, and they're all part of it, and we're all connected. And I think I started listening to that in the like height of lockdowns, and I was away from my fiance at the time, and it just made me think that we could have some kind of a spiritual connection, even being 5,000 miles apart. And I really, because I started thinking about how I could do that with him being so far away. And we tried to do some things, like it was more effective for him because he seemed to have more of a like developed psychic
sensitivity to it too.
Yeah, and like my brother like is the same. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it was fun. My brother, oh my God, I could go on to telling my brother about he is very sensitive to this stuff. Like he sees interdimensional stuff all the time, and he'll be like, yeah, there's like shadow things that I see in my room, I see them at work. Like I'm like, that's scary.
Oh, I've seen some stuff. Read your super chat. It's
I'm
been up
gonna
here for a
read it.
while. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna read it. Why are you sorry? This is awesome. And the super chat is about that. It's Josh McDonald, the beautiful Josh McDonald. Smash that like button. So do what Josh says. The panel is delivering some incredible conversations tonight, and yes, they are. I'm enjoying it as much as everyone else is. So, thank you very much for that, Josh. And another comment here actually is from Squeaka Mouse, who's just a little bit below that. And she talked about this on another stream that we did, and we're talking about like the past lives, reincarnation, and that she told the story before about how she had a twin and she didn't find out hear about it until she was 6, but in fact she knew the entire time and would talk to her twin and communicate. So
so that's a direct personal experience, right?
Yeah. So we've got a great chat. So chat, I'm catching up with you guys too.
Let's again now staying within the realm of matter and time.
Yeah.
All right. So let's actually explore this twin thing for a second, because one of the things we know on a quantum physics level is this idea of entanglement, right? When two subatomic particles come in contact with each other, they're able to influence each other across all space. You could have one particle in another, at the other end of the universe beyond the speed of light, and one changes, the other one instantly changes. Across the speed of light doesn't affect it. They're instantly connected on some level below, hyperspace, if you like, right? Subspace. And so think about it. As someone who's a twin, especially an identical twin, they started off as one zygote that divided but then separated, right? So from a pure level of quantum mechanics, of course they were one being, but that actually is a great mystical truth, because there's a story that actually exists within Sufism, and it actually also exists in Jewish Kabbalah. I don't know that it exists. It may exist in some versions of Christian mysticism. We've lost a lot of Christian mysticism. Like, a lot of it got suppressed, but we still have, because it was still formally accepted in Judaism and Islam. A lot of Christian mystics sort of kept it all very quiet because they were harassed. But in Judaism and Islam, in both traditions, there's a different way to look at the Adam and Eve story. So in both traditions, there's this idea that Adam and Eve, in the mystical traditions, Adam was actually one being that was male and female. It was a hermaphrodite. Initially in the Quran, it says, we created you from one soul, and then we made that soul male and female, and then from that we created nations and tribes, right? And so the idea, that's how God does it. So we created you from one soul. The idea is one soul, Adam, was actually male and female, and then the creation of Eve from the rib is actually the separation from the rib of the two sexes into two separate entities. And then the idea is the male and the female are one half of a whole. And then the idea of the twin soul that exists in many is every soul is one half and is looking for the other half, right? And so that's a mystical idea, but again, it goes back to this quantum entanglement concept.
That's so cool. Okay, I have to stop for a second and do this for Squeaka and Josh. Wow.
For all of us, Lady B, for all of us, thank you for that. So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of I guess the connection between people and time is that when we see others and we see what we think of as being ghosts or other presences, how much of that could possibly be that you're actually seeing through time?
Correct.
Instead of
a substantial portion of it.
I've totally thought that. I was like, when I first started to wanting to be a writer, I was reading ghost stuff when I was younger, and I definitely thought that. I'm like, what if it's not it's time travel or something? There's some kind of something there.
A slip in time, because I have a
thinning the veil.
Well, yeah, I saw multiple ghosts once. When we were younger, probably 13, camping, Boy Scout camping trip on a battlefield, Gettysburg. And 100,000 men died on that battlefield.
One of the most haunted places in the world. Yeah.
It has to be. And I got up early, 6:30, and it was 6, just as the sun was coming up to, go use a tree. And as I looked across the field, there was, mist. And I would say 3 feet up, I saw that portion of a horse and a guy on it. And then from knees up of soldiers following him. And it lasted quite a while. At least in my mind. It
wasn't just something out of this corner of your eye that was gone.
No, not corner. I was looking right at it. If it scared me so much, I froze. I almost zipped myself up and I dove back into the tent, because it was one of those moments where it wasn't a corner of the eye moment. It was this is right in front of me, and they are going, they don't even see me. They're going across this way, and it just, they came into focus. They were so strongly seen, but not physically, more mist-like, but mist-like enough I could tell that they were uniforms. I could tell it was a horse, a man, and then
I've seen
they
some of
were
those
gone.
videos. They're
I was-
crazy.
I never doubted after that there is something we cannot explain in this world, and you'll never prove me that there's any, like it's just.
Well, if you
that
were a
was
standard Hollywood
figment.
writer, it'd be like, I don't believe in ghosts, except for that one time I saw 10,000
Exactly.
soldiers on
Exactly.
the battlefield of Gettysburg. But I must have been crazy. I must have had
Exactly.
such a drink.
You know, yeah, it was just one of those moments. It was
Yeah,
a
I was like, yeah, you know, these things
Right.
happen.
Yeah, that was a moment that I'll never forget because it was so like you could see the mustache, you could see the men's face, but it was a form of mist, and it was just like the fog became something that, like you're saying, Zax, it was like a slip in time. Like they were there, I just wasn't. You know what I mean? Like they were there in their moment in time. They couldn't see me, but I could see them, and it changed my life forever. Changed my
It's like
life forever.
you're on that frequency then for just a split second or a minute, however long it
Yeah.
is, and
Yeah.
if everything is happening relatively at the same time,
It's gonna happen.
yeah, and you can see and you experience part of that, even if, especially I find if it's sight related. So you're not. It seems like you're seeing things that would have happened in that area. You're not
Yes.
seeing things that would have happened somewhere else, and
Right.
so that's why it makes me think: are we actually seeing something that is happening, and we're seeing it happen, or we're seeing this person as opposed to someone across the world?
Right,
Because
it
it's
wasn't-
very related
exactly.
to where you are.
Exactly. It wasn't Napoleon. It was
Right.
It was definitely Union, or it was most likely Union soldiers walking across the field, and it was a powerful. Like I wish you could see it through my eyes right now because it's still burnt into my brain. That's how powerful it was.
That is so cool.
The universe is having fun with us. The universe
Yeah.
is having fun with us.
Mm.
It will not allow us to adopt this delusional materialist worldview. It will keep doing these things because that's why we're never going to solve all these mysteries. You know, let's say this year the aliens land on the White House lawn and introduce themselves. Great. There will still be 1,000 mysteries, 100 years from now that we won't understand, right? Every time we think we're going to understand the universe, it's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. The moment that we grasp it, the universe will go, no, you don't have all the
Right.
information. You
I
can't have
almost
all
look at it and think about like I don't know that I want to understand it. Like I was thinking back to what we were talking about, how we're all everything at once. That's a very powerful idea that might just blow your mind. And it kind of reminded me, like I was trying to meditate one time before going to bed, and I was having a really hard time. And I was just kind of asking the spirits of my ancestors to help me out and just tell me that I'm not alone and show me who I am. And that was the question I was really asking, like who I am. And I had this really freaking trippy dream. And it was like I knew it was in the past, and there were like two people, and they had a very loving relationship. And somehow, like these people just somehow let me know that I was part of both of them. And like this was in the past, and this is the kind of love, and it was more of a feeling than even things I remember, because it was weird. It was kind of futuristic, and it was just the strangest, beautiful experience. Though
you were part of your ancestors. I mean,
yeah, you are. I mean, everything is.
People. Yeah,
that's awesome.
We've got a
So
question here
that's
from
a good
Squeak Mouse in the chat. Do you think some of this could be a pack memory or mentality, like a shared memory?
Sure, because
I felt like it was like that was the weird thing, because it was I don't remember I vaguely remember what the people look like. There was like a blonde woman and like a Japanese looking man or something, but I felt the feelings that were involved with it were so dear. Like there was an overall feeling of peace and love and acceptance, and then there was something else, like we are you, and you are here, and you are you, and you will exist in the future. Like I can't even, like, now that I think about it, it was the feeling, like there was, it almost felt like I was getting like knowledge or something, like I was just showing that this is out here, this is like when you open your like third eye and look beyond what you're seeing, like it's out there and you can find that feeling again.
Absolutely. All of this I would put into the Wheel of Time series had I been able to do it.
That was taken from you. Well, and how much of, like, this is something I've also been trying to explore with other people too, is the idea of in life, and I've never had someone tell me they can't relate to this, the idea of there's a push or a nudge, and you're moved in a direction that maybe you don't notice until later, that can change the rest of your life, and you're not sure why you made all those decisions. And it could be that you normally you turn left when you turn right, or you traffic is busy that day, so you take a different turn that you wouldn't take, and it leads you somewhere else, and all that comes up. And these are all things that, if you really think about some of the decisions you've made, there are a series of smaller decisions that sometimes could have been influenced by something else and leading you to one specific place. And that's something I know I've experienced, where it's or you have a feeling that you just need to do something. You're not sure why. You don't always think it through. You just, I'm going to leave early today. And because you left early, this, and this happened, which then has affected all these other people. And how much of it is really in your control, and how much of it is
that's
Like
something
a
that like
butterfly
trips
effect?
me up.
it's crazy though. Like, and it really, if you think about it, has anyone not experienced that?
No, we've all experienced it. I
Yeah.
experienced it actually. I'll share with you a sad story. This January 2nd, I was in a major car accident, and my beloved, and it was my beloved, a sexy red Camaro was completely totaled.
Oh,
And broke my heart, because I had that car for 7 years and I loved it. And it was like my Knight Rider car. It was beautiful. And then somebody hit me, and it was a terrible four car accident. No one was injured, thank God. But
thank God.
my car was completely destroyed. And the funny thing is, before I had two options. I was on the 10 freeway, which Lady BFR knows, and I could have gotten off at Lincoln or on 5th Street to go to my home. And something inside of me said, get off at Lincoln, get off at Lincoln, get off at Lincoln. And I ignored that impulse, and I got off at 5th Street. And right as I pulled off of 5th Street, that exit, I was hit by that car, right? Had I not had taken the Lincoln, I would not have lost. But you see, there's two ways to look at that, right? So that brings us to another level. So we're dealing with it now, bringing it back to Star Wars, this whole idea of multiverses, right? And Avengers multiverses, right? So people have been struggling with the concept of free will and predestination, which ties into what you're saying, Zach, that we have these things, ultimately, could I have made any other choice? Was I always meant to go on Fifth Avenue and lose my car, right? And many theologies and many religions, including various sects of Islam, have come up with all kinds of theories. So I actually now follow there's the mainstream. I'm just going to go. The mainstream Islamic theology has always been that there is only one timeline, and that God writes that timeline. He's the author, like you said.
Oh, really? Okay.
And that you don't have any control for that. You're going to experience what God has written for you. That's the mainstream Islamic theology. However, there is a minority school that's a valid school of Islamic theology that's considered a valid school, which actually posits and has posited for 1,000 years the multiverse belief.
I love that idea.
That God has written every infinite version of events. And because how do you reconcile free will? And so the traditional Islamic answer has been free will is an illusion, that there's only God's will, and so that's one solution, right? And then people say, well, what kind of God is that? It's like, well, God is God, and you don't have an argument with it. You don't control. God says that's what's going to happen. You can't really argue with him because he's in charge, right? So the traditional Islamic view is there's only God's will, and your will is irrelevant. And so whatever you do, ultimately, you still get the responsibility. It was God that wrote you're going to do these terrible sins. You're going to go to hell for it.
Right.
But he also wrote that ending for you. So he's a storyteller. It's like you get to write the script. And if you write the script that your character burns in hell, well, you're writing the script. Character can't fight you about that, right? That's what happens, right? Shakespeare, Hamlet has no control over what Shakespeare's going to do to him, right? So that's the mainstream Islamic theological view of predestination free will. But this minority view that I've now come to adopt is that God writes all possible universes.
I know, because I was just going to say, could Hamlet conceive that Shakespeare had thought of like a million different ways to take that story? And he could have had a different ending.
And Hamlet could have had a happy ending in many of them, right? So I am now of the view that of the multiverse thing, that God has written all possible universes and all possible outcomes, and you're living in a choose your own adventure book.
Right.
Yeah, or if you're like,
what you want by your choices, but you didn't write the outcome, and so God is still the author of the story, right? Yep. But it's a instead of only one outcome, you're in a choose your own adventure novel. That's my perspective from a theological point.
That's interesting, because you could go back to the whole Gospel of Thomas idea that God is in all of us and we are all part of God. And then you could look at that and say, well, if that's the case, then you exercising your free will is actually doing what God would do, as you are an aspect of the divine. So it's just like, well, it all goes back into that, like everything everywhere is all connected, and that's so crazy.
I do like
there's you just have your life experience. You can't prove those versions. So go on.
I do like the multiverse idea where they're all parallel, but I also like the one where when you are born, when you start making decisions, like it creates a new universe. So when I went right, there's a different version of me that went left in that moment and created a new universe. So it's not parallel. They're not all going parallel at the same timeline, but separate universes. I'm actually creating multiverses every decision I make.
Correct.
Like me just deciding to tell you that there's another version of me that sat back. But I created
and
that
God
this
has
moment.
all versions of those stories. You're just living through those
Absolutely.
stories. So let's
Right.
take a moment to acknowledge this very profound thing Squeak
Yes.
maybe Lady Bayfire, if you want to read what Squeak has shared with us.
Squeaka said, my best friend as a child snuck up to me at the bus stop one morning. I was 13. She startled me so the pills I wanted to OD on spilled everywhere before I could take them. She'd never done that before.
Wow.
First of all, thank you for sharing
Yes,
that
thank
very
you.
painful story, and we're glad that you're with us.
Yeah, I was telling Squeaka that in the chat. Like, I'm glad you stayed, and I think like I can
World
kind
is a
of
better
relate to
place
this
that you've
story.
been
Your friend.
Yeah.
Adolescence sucks.
But
Adolescence sucks, man.
It always sucks, and we're in a horrible time right now where adolescents, there are aspects of culture that are almost trying to destroy adolescence.
Yes.
Oh, they are so much. And isn't it sad to think that like so many adolescent like kind of experiences are sort of like these coming of age things that culturally people did to prepare people for adulthood and kind of like instilled in them in their own kind of spiritual thing. And it was like the sort of things that would happen with like certain cultures that had like coming of age traditions. It was to build you up, and instead like people tell you now, like they tell kids, your identity is formed now. You are who you think you are. You are who you feel you are right now. And it's like there's no kind of growth opportunities
and
or
no way to put it in
experiences.
context. Every culture has historically had coming of age rituals, whether it's a bar mitzvah, whether it's going off as a Native American and doing a vision quest as a 13-year-old child in the woods by yourself, right? There's all cultures have some kind of thing, and because it's psychologically necessary, because the transition from childhood to adulthood and reproduction is so psychologically jarring that unless you have ways to channel it, you can become mentally ill. And because we have taken away all forms of transition, the only transition we have is we throw these kids into a prison. We throw them to junior high school. We throw them essentially into a prison from which they cannot escape. They're surrounded by hormonal children who are also on the verge of mental illness, who are suddenly transforming into biological things they don't understand. They still have the mindset of children, but their biologies are now able to bear children. It's too much, and that is why we have a widespread mental illness and breakdown amongst young people.
Yeah, and it's like there's the idea too that like you are like they're like whatever you are now is who you are, and there's no like growth or development.
Right.
Like I was reading this came from something I was reading about like transgenderism in particular, where it's like telling kids, if this is how you feel, this is permanent, you should change yourself to feel how you are now. Yeah. And then the idea is like there's the like loss of the childhood like growth and development and experimentation and going out and growing as a spiritual person. And there's no religion there's no greater culture for these kids to grasp onto, so they're grabbing onto the ideology and they're like being affirmed in like their beliefs, and they're saying, yes, this is who you are, that's who you have to be. And they kind of stick to it.
You can sell them pharmaceuticals, you can sell them surgical procedures. I mean, that's
but it's being solidified by doctors and therapists and people that used to be the ones that say, don't worry, but you have time to figure this out. Not anymore. It's like, figure it out now, you're 12.
I mean, I'm going to go back to this whole thing of again, wonderful thing about our conversation is all coming full circle. That whole thing that we're talking about, how specifically European Western culture threw out the baby with the bathwater. So medicine in the West is disconnected from the long tradition of homeopathy and traditional healing and shamanistic healing that has worked throughout history, right? And because that's all mumbo jumbo crap, right? And so it's all now pharmaceuticals. It's all now modern stuff, the experiments, right? Rather than stuff that has been proven to work for 10,000 years, we're going to put together these two chemicals and see what happens. Oh, 20 years from now, we didn't know that was going to do that, right? Sorry about that, right? And so we have 10,000 years of homeopathy that proved itself, right? You have Chinese medicine, Indian medicine, Islamic medicine, all these traditions that have proven themselves that you know side effects through 10,000 years of experience and everything, but you don't have it.
I know, and that's like kind of one of the annoying things about healing. Like I've had like psychological problems for a really long time, like in like especially with depression and stuff. And I ended up having some traumatic things happen to me, and they just wanted to throw medicine at me. And I did talk therapy for a while, but it wasn't helping. And I don't really think it was until I kind of started reading like spiritual, like esoteric stuff about the power within yourself to heal yourself and the power to control your stuff. And I don't know, I can't really. I'm not explaining it very well, but the power you
But
can
I'm getting
to
the sentiment.
yeah, you're getting sentiment where it's like you can look at yourself, you can do this self-reflection. It's more of a spiritual thing than a like physical thing, and I think that's really lost with like psychology and stuff.
Well, but look at it, and again, this is Europe. Let's look at America. Let's look at the development of religious traditions in the 19th century. You had the rise of Christian Science, which started off as let's find other ways to heal. Why were these traditions rising? Let's find prayer and other forms of science. Why were they rising? Because even in the 1800s, our doctors were quacks. We're giving people, here's reptile juice. That'll solve your problem. It wasn't solving
bloodletting.
Go back to prayer because we were so disconnected. Again, we have disconnected our traditions. And the challenge, we as a culture have offered many wonderful things to the world. The dark side of what we have offered is this dichotomy of science and ancient wisdom, right? And as a result, so when I went to work in China, they've lost all their ancient Chinese knowledge because Mao killed all of them, right?
Yeah.
Killed all those guys, right? And so, and you go to places, unfortunately, one of my biggest tragedies, is in the last 2 years, I used to have when I was on Twitter, I would have these intense debates with fellow Muslims because there's a lot of, in this generation, a lot of doctors are Muslim, right? Parents are like, God, don't become a screenwriter. That's unstable. Go become a doctor, Ahmed, right? And so all these doctors are Muslim. And I would debate with them how we were handling this pandemic. And their response was just regurgitating mantras that they've been taught in their environment. And I said, Islam says this about health and medicine. And they would block me because they didn't want to hear what Islam had to say about health and medicine and the Prophet Muhammad's homeopathic remedies for viruses and things like that. Because this was their new religion. And it blew me away because
scientism, guys,
wisdom to give these people. Why are you throwing it away? You've abdicated the wisdom of your history and embraced this experimental culture that ain't working.
I know, right? And they talk about people like, crystals and stuff like that. I'm like, the placebo effect is real. And my belief, it is the mind-body connection. So who cares if it doesn't physically do anything if you think it does, and that's enough to get that effect? That's awesome because they haven't been able to figure out how to replicate that.
Yeah,
but it's real.
And the things we may eventually discover that the ritual was not more just placebo. We may eventually discover there's subtle.
I agree. I agree with that.
But speaking of throwing away valuable things, I have to throw Scott away.
Okay, you got to throw him away.
Yeah, he's got to go.
All right,
you're muted, Scott.
Muted.
Yeah, that's me.
YouTuber.
I am a YouTuber. I love talking about stuff like this. I mean, we do it on my channel. We go through fits. We do a Song of Ice and Fire, and then we talk ancient history, and then we talk, esoteric, everything.
I need to go watch some of your videos because I'm about Ice and Fire.
We do it all. We're going to be starting with myself, Jane Theory. If Zax wants to do it too, we're going to be doing the Winds of Winter sample chapters again. We're going to read them with an AI reading it in our voices and then go over it, which will be fun. Tomorrow we're doing a Beatles stream though.
Sweet.
Yeah, with That 70s Show fan, he is an encyclopedia of the Beatles. So really, it's me just really letting him talk. Yeah, that too. So we talk about it all.
Talk to them. We can't get some more Rex.
But I want you all to come on the show. Like at some point,
I'd be honored and delighted.
Please.
So Scott, I'm going to drop my email. You can also get it from Zach, but I'm going to drop my personal email in the chat if you have a chance to just get that.
Yeah, man. This has been so much fun, Zach. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. This was seriously one of those moments where like you feel better when you get off YouTube, and that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, so, I know.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Scott. Nice to meet you. Have a great evening.
This is brilliant. Everybody. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen, Scott.
It really does. God bless everyone. Take care.
God bless. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. Well, I mean,
that's cool.
Yeah, Scott's awesome. He has a great channel. I've been on there quite a few times. We're doing the House of the Dragon stuff, and then we reviewed the Graham Hancock series.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool. I want to watch that. What is that on?
The Ancient Apocalypse, right?
On Netflix, yeah, the Netflix series.
and it's being attacked by so many of these, you know.
Okay, what is it? What is the main idea of the theory of the show?
You explain that.
Oh, okay. Well, what he does is he asks questions, and a lot of it has to do with common impact, and the possibility that reset culture at the time, and that humans had been developed far beyond that at that point, and then this pulled them back, and then after that, that knowledge was spread out again from the surviving aspects of those cultures, and that's kind of the central idea. But what he does is he asks questions about specific things, like the Bimini Road. What was the Bimini Road?
Yeah, that is so fascinating. Like,
Who
if you
did
guys
that
want to
and
read
for
about
what?
that, you got to
There you
read
go.
this book. It's so good. It's by Frank Joseph, and it's like the lost history of ancient America, and it talks about like legitimate archaeological things that they found in North America that the Smithsonian Institute is hell bent on destroying and like making disappear. Like, they take the giant skeletons, they have flooded a bunch of like Mesoamerican, North American sites where there was like pyramids, where there were things that were very similar to stuff in South America. They have just done things that I'm like, I read this and I'm like, I will not even support anything the Smithsonian does because they're so hell bent on destroying our ancient culture and history.
Yeah. No, it's I actually worked on a project. I always tell my Hollywood stories. So I worked on a project. I pitched around town 10 years ago. I'm always ahead of the curve, right? I pitched around town developing a movie based on a real life incident. It was sort of a modern Indiana Jones type movie, but based on a real life incident that is documented in early 20th century newspapers from Arizona, New Mexico, where an explorer of the Grand Canyon, I know in the 1910s.
Yes,
you know this. This gentleman who's an explorer of the Grand Canyon. Found a cave, and this is documented in the news reports of the time, where he found a cave, and he claimed he found a cave hidden deep in the Grand Canyon, where he was exploring the cave, and he was stunned to discover a massive chamber filled with ancient Egyptian and Buddhist artifacts in the middle of the Grand Canyon. And so he alerted, and he went back out and told people, and he was a respected spelunker and explorer. He wasn't some weirdo. He'd had a long history in the area, a respected member of the community. And so he goes, I just found this cave, and there's huge statues of Buddha, and there's like these statues of Osiris. And what is this? Gold? What is this? And so they, in these interviews, they then contact the reporters of the time, contact the Smithsonian Institution, and the Smithsonian Institution quotes them as saying, this is absolutely fascinating, and we're going to send our teams down there to check it out. And then they do follow-up interviews, and they say, yeah, no, we found it, and we maybe we've got the lost internet. We found it, and we're going to take all these incredible items to the Smithsonian and catalog them and understand how could ancient Asian, Middle Eastern items be in the Grand Canyon. And that's the last you hear of it. So years later, people are like, hey, whatever the hell happened to that? And the Smithsonian's like, what are you talking about? We never found anything. It's like, but you told these journalists you did in like 1920 or whatever it was. Nope. No, we didn't. That's all crazy. It must have been a crazy guy make up stories. It's like the Roswell crash. When the Air Force puts out, we got a UFO. Next day, no, we don't got no UFO.
I'll top that one, Cameron. I have like one of the very first streamers I ever watched is like into de-occulting and looking at like esoteric stuff that's in everyday life and kind of explaining it through an occult lens. And he is a tour guide for the Grand Canyon, and he has no Native Americans there for years. And yeah, they know this is real. This is just an accepted fact of life, and this is real. This is an accepted thing, and they know where they're at, but the government keeps people from doing that. And they also talk about the underground tunnels and that were used by the ancient aliens to save the people from the last time there was a flood. And guess what? Those like people that saved the Indians were in their language. They were called the Anunnaki.
And I think they were called the ant people as well. They were
yeah, that's how they say it. That's the translation in their language of the ant people was Anunnaki.
Just
say it.
Coincidence. But this site is, I love this idea, this story, Cameron, because this is also continued on with it beyond the cover up. It is the idea that they've made it completely inaccessible, that no one can even go and explore that area, and that it's patrolled heavily, and they used helicopters to make sure people aren't getting near this specific space. And so that tells me something is down there, or that maybe the argument would be that this is the other side. So this is what they would tell you is that, well, that people are going to be curious and therefore get themselves into dangerous situations. So we're going to keep them safe by making sure they can't get in there. that's the story that they would tell you. But this has been going on for a long time, and
I know, and I'm just like so curious because it's like the Smithsonian is so hell bent on like perpetrating the Columbus myth, which really is a myth because it's not even true what they talk about Columbus. Like Columbus went looking for the Egyptian land of Put, where they found all the gold. And if you read this book, it talks about how there's actually a lot of evidence that Put was South America or something. And I think even Columbus even mentions that in his notes, but they're like, no, they're looking for a like ocean thing to India or whatever. And it's such BS. Like everything they want us to believe is BS. And it's like, I'm not like, I don't know why they like are so hellbent on this. And it's like, I can't think of like any kind of reason why are they lying about this.
Well, I mean, they're, the official reasons they'll give you is, if you actually meet somebody who's involved in a cover up and not denying that there is a cover up, let's say you meet the official reason they'll give you is, people aren't ready for it. It will cause a breakdown of civilization and blah, 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 blah. I don't think that that's true. I think people are quite ready. A majority of people, they adjust pretty quickly. When the Wright brothers took off and had the first airplane, did the world end? Did everyone go, oh my God, bad?
I mean, I think honestly, it almost would help things out. It's like if we knew the truth that like almost every culture, that the seafaring culture in the ancient world had been to North America. North America was settled thousands of times by many different groups of people from like every part of the world. It might make like everything that's going on in this modern day with these sort of like racial things and stuff, it might make it all better if we knew that we'd all been here forever. But maybe that's why.
Well, that's the truth, is the people that hold it back don't want it to get better because they live in a world where there's a hierarchy and they control the information, so they're at the top. And so when information is universalized, then they lose that power. And so we've had that struggle within the internet, right? The moment why have they in some degree successfully controlled the internet and censored it in so many levels? Google started off, remember, as a universalization of search things, and now we know that Google is working with the governments to suppress information, right? And to make sure your search things that they don't deny it. They openly say, we want to prevent hate speech and we don't want you to link to things that are bad for you. They weren't saying that 10 years ago. That's what they're saying now, because those institutions don't ever like universalization of knowledge, because that would raise consciousness. And as a result, the people that believe that a rising masses, because they have lived in a limited world, that there's only so much to go around. So if the lower classes become wealthier in terms of knowledge, that means their status is going to go down. The idea that we're all expand and grow, and there still will be people that have more, and you can still be rich if you want to be in a world of more knowledge and thing, that doesn't occur to them because they live in a materialistic limited world.
Yeah, I kind of think that has something to do with it. It's like they don't want everyone to know their shared history and where they came from, because it would really cause a social upheaval to the kind of established hierarchies in the world that I think that has been kind of like, if you want to get really deep into the stuff that has been kind of like elite ruling class, lower fourth dimensional human reptilian hybrids, if you want to go down that route, which have been trying to keep us down in that. Like they're trying to keep the hierarchy of power where there's certain groups, and it's like, how occult do you want to go in? It's like there's Jesuits, there's like certain different factions of all these different people, and
why not?
But I wanted to see something. Nas said, I'm waiting for Lady B to admit she's into Thelema and loves Aleister Crowley. I think Aleister Crowley is like the original edgelord, and he's stupid. But like I found I have this really awesome used bookstore that's around Claremont, and Claremont is really old area, and it's sort of like they call it the Harvard of the West, and it's the arts and crafts colony.
University there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But I get a lot of really, really old books, and I actually found like the original printing of Thelema, like the handbook. It's like this big. It's really cool. I can get it for you if you want to see it. Like I'll like.
Oh, so that's valuable. Is it an original edition? Is it signed by anybody within the?
I don't know. Like I'll just go and get it really fast if you want to see it. It's just on my bookshelf.
See it if you have an original.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'm gonna talk about this for a minute because this sort of goes to what you were saying before, Lady B. So grab your. I'll talk while you're getting your book. So this is relatively new, and it's a look at the. I don't pretend to understand genetics, but this is a look at the map of the world and how mitochondrial DNA has migrated throughout the world. And if you look here,
so what does this mean? How does this map work?
This is the percentage of what level of these different mitochondrial or in your DNA, and
Okay.
it's depending on where you are in the world. And so they use a pie chart to break it up.
All right.
And one of the things I think is interesting is, and this was talked about on one of actually Scott's shows, so I'm stealing his thunder here. But if you look here at the Pacific Island area,
Yeah.
and I think that's New Zealand. Is that New Zealand? No, that's New Zealand.
New Zealand's out there. So you're looking at some of the Polynesian islands, like you know, Hawaii, Tahiti kind of area. Is that what you're looking at? Yeah.
Yeah. And this is interesting to me because if you look at this,
So
the
that's
narrative is
almost one thing, red.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And if you look at how the narrative we've always been told is people got to North America across the Bering Sea, across the land bridge over here. And so if you look at the path that these people have taken is they go all the way up here, up around near towards Japan, and they don't go any further than this. There's no red up through here. None. So every other step of the path here, they've connected with other cultures and they've left a mark. But they stop right about here. They never cross this area.
Yeah, the whole land bridge thing is a total myth.
But look at this. They're all over here.
It shows up over there.
Right.
So
they show up all over here.
Yeah.
So
the explanation is simple. It's Lemuria. That's the explanation.
Oh.
There was a Pacific island continent of which the Polynesian islands, including Hawaii, Tahiti, all of these islands, Easter Island, were actually the mountaintops of that original Pacific grand mass that was flooded and destroyed.
Lemuria is so fun to go down.
So, I mean, forgive me if I'm interrupting you. I just want to add some thoughts.
No.
So I've studied Hawaiian Huna, which is the Hawaiian mystical tradition, with people that continue that tradition. I've studied it in Hawaii with the Huna traditions there, and they have told me, these Huna practitioners have told me, the descendants, the Kahunas don't really exist anymore, but the descendants of the Kahunas, they've told me that one of the beliefs that the Polynesians have, particularly the Hawaiians have, is that the language of Hawaii is the original native language of humanity, and that you will find all Hawaiian words throughout the world. And I thought, oh, what an interesting claim. And then you start looking at your own languages and comparing it to Hawaiian words, and you keep finding them. I mean, I'll give you an example. Hawaii, I believe, literally forgive if there's any Hawaiians who are in the chat who am I mistranslating, forgive me, I'm just going off of memory. I understand Hawaii means the land on the wind, something like that, right? Hawaii, the land on the wind. And in Urdu, my language in Pakistan, Urdu, Hawa means the wind, right? You have the Kahunas, which represent the holy mystics of the Hawaiian Polynesian tradition. And throughout the Middle East, we have the Kahins, which became the Kohens of Judaism and became the Kahinas of Islam, which are mystics, right? The Kahins and the Kahinas. It's the same word. And so the more you look into the Hawaiian language, you keep finding these incredible parallels to societies that allegedly have no connection to them. The words keep popping up throughout. And you're like, wait a minute. Maybe the Hawaiians are the original native language of the planet. Maybe they're the original native people. And maybe this haplogroup thing that you've got indicates at least that they were a specific race that existed there. Because if on a practical level, think about it. And I've always thought about this, and I finally saw someone actually write this in analysis. Like, does anyone actually believe that a bunch of the official story that a bunch of people got into these little canoes and went into the Pacific Ocean like Pi from The Life of Pi and no idea where they were going and hoped they might find land? And after several months, they landed in Hawaii, right? Do they think people actually did that, right? Or were they actually on a huge landmass that was there and they naturally were there and migrated there, and then that landmass was submerged, right? That's more realistic than the idea of let's go into this unknown Pacific Ocean and just.
Or there was some other mode of transportation that was more high technology kind of a thing.
Teleported or vibe or whatever, you levitated. But the idea is that the traditional method sounds pretty. I mean, that's pretty ballsy. I'm going to get in a canoe and just go east and hope I don't die for 6 months and hope there's something there. That's pretty crazy. And
it is.
People did this.
Well, and also those islands were ultra competitive, and so their cultures there to survive would have to do physical combat with each other because there's the small spaces. And so the idea that if they could have traveled there, that they would have then just stayed there and competed instead of continuing to look outward is that's baffling as well. Like if they're going to have jumped in canoes and like you said, and paddle to the middle of nowhere, that they would then stop at those places and then fight each other for generations. It doesn't like
I know
none of it lines up.
doesn't make sense. Like, or
And-
like how they got where, or like why is it like all these stories? It's like Native Americans have tons and tons of stories about like blonde haired gods or like
Yes.
other people that lived there, and it's like everyone's like, yeah, Native people, blah blah. I'm like, why you wanted to accept all of their culture, but when they tell stories about that, you're like, no, that's not real.
Well, the official stories are so wacky. They actually make our ancestors seem like supermen. They make our ancestors. I believe the Atlantis and Lemuria stories more than I believe that a bunch of Egyptian slaves figured out how to move those immovable stones and cut them in a way that we can't do today. With
Bronze. I mean, like, have you ever used
that's
that
not
stuff
probable.
with tools? No.
Yeah, I mean, the story they're giving us makes these people sound more magical than they could have been.
Yes, it does, and they contradict if you really think about it. So, but Lady B, your book.
Yes, this is for you, Monkey Jeebus.
Oh,
okay, so we have a premiere of Theosophy. This is it's got Mosbury. It's coming vegan. Whittier, California, January 12th, 1914. So that's the inscription there.
This is from 1914.
Yeah, it says like O.W. Malsby, Whittier, California.
Okay, so that might have been a member of the Theosophical Society at that time.
Yeah, and here is Madame Blavatsky herself.
Yeah.
And I did start reading this a while ago, but it is like Theosophy. What is it? Theosophy of religion as an ethical choice. And it says a clean life, an open mind, a pure heart, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception, a brotherliness for all, a readiness to give and receive advice and instruction, a courageous endurance of personal injustice, a brave declaration of principles, a valiant defense of those who are unjustly attacked, and a constant eye to the idea of human progression and perfection, which the sacred science depicts. These are the golden stairs of the steps which the learner may climb to the temple of divine wisdom. H.P. Blavatsky. I'm gonna say that right, but yeah, it's got like the whole thing, and it's like it's in really good condition, and
that's worth something. That's actually worth something.
Yeah, it says address all inquiries to the General Secretary at Crotona, Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. But yeah, this was from the American Theosophy Society. And
that's
it's
cool.
very
you got to show me this Pomona bookstore because I love old bookstores. You know, I found a lot.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like mostly just a used book library, friends of the library store, but like the place gets like all sorts of weird old stuff, and it's like you just know that somebody just died and they just cleared out the house because of all the old craftsman houses there. And I've been in some of them, and it's crazy some of the things. But yeah, I found this, and I got this at the same time. I got another book from the same era. It was like a kind of like a devotional, and it was just like nice thing to read. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, I remember when I was in college once, you know, I went to Dartmouth, it's a very nice college, and, you know, and there's a lovely library. And as a freshman, I remember just wandering on the stacks of the library. And this is Dartmouth's one of the old, early American colonial colleges. 1769 was founded, it was still colonies. And so I went through, and there's stuff in the stacks from the original collection. And there was in the stacks, it wasn't in the rare book section. They have a rare book section.
Yeah, you're
so I was going through that, and I found this book that was in Spanish. And I opened it. It looked very like delicate, like binding, and I opened it, and I looked inside, and it was from 1771, and it had been checked out. The last time it had been checked out was like 1782. Like there was like a checkout thing, and like somebody like April 12th, 1782 was the last time it had been checked out of the library. And I was like, "Holy crap!" And I just took it to the library and says, Can I take this out? They're like, yep, it's on the record. So I took it back to my dorm room for like 2 weeks just to have this like 200-year-old book that was in the stack.
That's so crazy. I know it's like my ex had a book about like witchcraft from like the 1600s that he got at a used bookstore because he was like living in Scotland. So I love used bookstores. I'm always in there.
But when were you in Scotland?
Like 5 years ago.
Okay, because I studied at the University of Edinburgh. I love Scotland.
Oh yeah, I didn't stay. I was there for like 9 days. I was just visiting my ex. So
that sweater I was wearing at the beginning of the, I'll bring the show back. Sweater. It's too hot right now. This little sweater that I was wearing is from Edinburgh. I got this.
Oh, lovely! It's like so beautiful there. Like the energy in Scotland is so different than it is here. Like there is just like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a heaviness of the history
it's-
of the age of the place that is
Because
just
it's preserved.
not
It wasn't
present.
destroyed in World War II. It's preserved. It's the last.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
so
it's like
crazy.
you know, it's like the Czech Republic. You go there, it's all these beautiful 1,000-year-old buildings that weren't bombed.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool. I love finding this stuff. I've been like on a trip to kind of collect the great religious works of the world, and it's like I wanted to get a Bible, but I didn't want to just go buy a Bible. I was like, the right Bible is going to speak to me. I'm gonna find it, and it's about like this size, and it's from like the 30s, and it has like the original people like wrote their name, family name, and stuff on. It's leather. It's so nice, and I love it because it's just like this is old, and this has like meaning to it, and yeah, I hope I can find. My next thing is to find Lord of the Rings like that. Since I've got everything, I got like the Popol Vuh, I got like the Quran, I have Bhagavad Gita, I have the Bible, I have the Gnostic Bible, and yeah, I think the next thing I'm going to read
Which translation of the Quran you got? I want to make sure you got a good one.
I don't know. I'd have to dig it out. It's kind of like I have a lot of stuff on my like thing, but I'll ask you if there's a good one. But it's pretty and
text it to me. Send me a picture. Text it to me when you find it.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty and that the words are beautiful, and it's just like there's this like every one of these texts has got like just amazing languages, and it's like if you look at the Bible and you start looking into like gematria and how that was all arranged, and you're like there's codes and everything, and it's so interesting.
So Zach, you were recently in Portugal and Spain. Tell us that story. What's that all about?
Oh yeah, I went all the way. I went through well for 2 weeks. I went from Lisbon to Coimbra. I saw the Roman ruins there. I went through Porto, went to Madrid, Seville, Cordoba, Barcelona, and Granada was one of my favorite places. The Alhambra, of course, I went to the Alhambra, and I saw your photos there, Cameron. So I have very similar photos, but I loved the whole Andalusian region. Yeah. It's amazing.
It's natural,
isn't it? I was shocked. People don't talk about that part of history, but it was 700 from 711.
Oh, it was 800 years. And
yeah,
you know, I sold a TV series, a pilot to Universal, set in Islamic Spain. The last 10 years, it's actually about 1482 to 1492, the fall of the last Sultan of Spain versus Ferdinand Isabella. And Christopher Columbus, by the way, is a central character to the series. And you discover he's a mystic and in a secret society, and he's not looking for India. And that's in the pilot. You establish that he knows exactly what he's looking for. And so, yeah, and it's a series I sold. And briefly, I had Ang Lee interested in directing it. He read the script in one night. And, you know, my producers knew Ang Lee. The guy was like, Ang Lee's never going to read it. He read it. Ang Lee's right after he'd won the Oscar for Life of Pi. And he read it. And he was like, and he said, I've always wanted to do a project set in the Alhambra and in Andalusia. He says he and his wife go there regularly for vacation. And then I was like, okay, my life just changed. Ang Lee wants to direct my pilot, right? And it was, and then his agents convinced him to leave the project, which was quite painful because Hollywood, that's my probably most important script I've written. And I've had multiple famous directors of the Ang Lee level, I won't list all of them, have come. And each time someone has convinced them, you don't want to do this project. The industry is terrified of pushing this project forward. There's an actual active resistance of telling the story of Andalusia because it violates a lot of the political narratives of today. The idea that the Muslims
that is so annoying.
Yeah, they created a progressive civilization for 800 years where Jews, Christians, and Muslims were living together in peace. That violates a lot of current political, narratives. And
I know, I don't like that. I don't like that you can't tell like another thing. It's kind of like goes back to the ancient America. It's like, well, why can't we knew that like a bunch of different people did discover America and lived here? Why is that so dangerous? Why is it so dangerous to think that like Jews, Muslims, and Christians could live in an area and have like a very successful
for almost 1,000 years for that? And so because the people that are profiting off of those three religions fighting each other need that story to not get out.
Yeah, they don't want to know that because once we stop fighting each other, we'll start fighting them, and that's how they maintain power. And I think that's the thing with the Smithsonian too, is less like they knew the truth. We'd ask why, or is the Smithsonian, which is a government-run institution, why are they hiding these sites from us, and why are they destroying this stuff?
Yeah.
Hey, Wakasashi.
Hey, great. So this is not exactly. Well, this is very much along with what you're talking about, but this is a story that I didn't know until I was there, being told by people who live there. His story is unbelievable, and the balls on this guy and what he managed to do to at least preserve a part of.
This is when the caliphate was collapsing and the taifas, right? Yes, that period.
and he was under siege in Granada, and instead of hiding, he goes out with 2 other guys and is like, if you we can work something out, I'll work for you. And what he did was he ended up working with this Spanish to the Catalans, I believe it was Castilians, who had come down, and he worked it out with them. So he made himself so valuable in that area that he managed to carve out a place where Muslims could still return to that were being pushed out of their other areas, and he held on to like 14. Yes, but this story and the fact that he did, and he had red hair. Apparently
Yeah, that's a crazy thing too. Like the red hair,
that's not your image of
like
these people,
where they
right?
come from,
Not at
and
all,
like how
Cameron.
yeah, that is so crazy.
Well, here's the fascinating thing. So I've actually written 2 series. I've written one on Andalus, which is set at the fall of Granada, and I've actually written. I was hired actually by a Middle Eastern production company, and they paid me to write 10 episodes of a season of Cordoba. You've been to Cordoba, about the beginning when the Muslims first arrived in the 7th century into Spain, right, and established it. And so I know both ends of the story. And what's fascinating is this: people don't realize this. The Spaniards were pre-Islamically, the Spaniards were blonde-haired, blue-eyed Viking people. They were Visigoths. They were more related to Germans and Swedes than they were to the people that we imagine today. Because there are blonde Spaniards, but we think of them as a brunette people. We think of them as that, and it's because of the intermixing with the Arabs and the North Africans and the Berbers and all these other groups that they went from being blonde Vikings into the modern Spanish that we think of, because that's all Arab blood, right? That created the modern Spanish people.
And he actually he was the first emirate, the Emirate of Granada, Muhammad I. He helped Ferdinand conquer Cordoba as part of the agreement to leave him in charge of Granada. But as part of that, the people who lived in Cordoba were able to then emigrate to where he was, and so they could still live in the area. And so it's a Game of Thrones level stuff like this.
And he sacrificed one major thing. He sacrificed, the queen to save the king, essentially. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And like just to. He brought in this guy's. Anyways, I'm babbling about this.
But Granada, that's 12. This was 1200s. Granada, another 200 years. Granada is still there, right? And you see it, and when you go there to the Alhambra, it's literally magical. Oh
my God!
And I met a Sufi mystic there who lives there. It was a Spanish Sufi, and he told me there is a dimensional doorway in Andalusia, specifically in Granada. That is why you feel different there. When you go there, he said, because it is actually a doorway to another dimension. And the whole region of southern Spain lives between 2 worlds. And you feel it when you're there.
That is so cool. I know I was going to ask you, Zach, because you made that video going into that, the below ground tower or something, the Templar thing. Like, what was the energy like there? Did it feel weird, or did it have a certain vibe of the place?
First, thank you, Squeaka, for the
yes, thank you, Squeaka. Good night, Squeaka. We love you.
Appreciate you. So the main area this was in Sintra in Portugal. It's there was it's a Templar initiation well, so it's a reverse tower. It goes down. I think it's down, 9 levels, and it's built like a tower. So there was so many people there that I didn't really feel any energy until. What I did was there was a bunch of blocked off areas you're not supposed to go. So of course I went in those blocked off areas where there's no light, there's no people, and they were physically blocked off, but I wanted to go see what's down this thing. And so I ended up in, and one guy followed me. I ended up in an area that was it was an unfinished initiation well that had been blocked off. Okay. And there was the energy in there was insane. And it was and looking straight up, it's like the idea is like looking into heaven, because you're in the bottom of this well and it goes straight up, and it's this blue sky and some trees overarching now. But it's when you start to come up and emerge, it's that the idea of this place is that you're then being reborn as a Templar Knight. Or a Freemason later on. But
by the way, and so I have I explore the Templar elements in my Andalus show, which God willing will get up here someday. I explore Columbus's relationship to those secret societies, and so it's all this hidden stuff, right? And that will come out. And my curse has been that I'm trying to bring this out in a world that is all based on secrets. Hollywood is the whole industry is based on.
I know. That's like my deocculting friend was very like, you start like seeing this kind of symbology and you understand the language that like filmmakers and propagandists and journalists use,
Mhm.
you'll like never be able to not see it.
Yeah, well, once I mean, it's like it's the Matrix. Once once
Yeah,
you've
it
seen
is
the red
definitely
pill,
the Matrix.
sometimes I don't want. It's like that guy, the guy who betrays him. I don't want to know this. I want to
Yeah.
forget this. I want to go back to the other world where everything makes sense, right?
It
I don't
tastes
want to
like
know
steak.
I
this.
know you don't
wanna
want to
know
do that because the more it feels uncomfortable, and it kind of sends you down on a quest where it's like you have to know yourself and you have to learn. And I think one of my things, probably the next thing I'll probably do is read what is it? I can't think of it. The works of Hermeticism of like Hermes
You
Trismegistus
guys-
and
you
like the
like
Emerald,
the Emerald
yeah,
Tablet, all that. Yes,
the
yes.
Emerald tablets and stuff like that. So that's probably like my next deep dive thing. So
Also look at the three initiatives, which is a very good sort of modern way of retelling the Hermetics. Yeah.
yeah, Hermeticism is very cool because that's kind of like the idea of as above, so below, and everything is a like innerverse mirrors the outerverse. So like the idea of the downward temple is very interesting because that's kind of like you're going down to be reborn, but it's also sort of like an analogy to the inner and outer worlds. Like there's a lot of stuff going down there. That was very fascinating. I watched that video several times.
It was incredible to be able to be down there and to be down there alone for the most part. Because the experience is supposed to be alone. You're supposed to be in the dark. There's no lights. You're supposed to wander through this cave until you eventually find your way out. And depending on which way you come out, it's so the guide told me, well, see, you could have been a Templar because you went your own, picked your own path and still came out the other side. Right. So I'm sure he does that to everyone, but it's a good line. I should use that sometime. But one of the things,
use that on a date, buddy. Use that on a date.
I need to use it on a date.
You're a true Templar queen.
you would I was thinking about you actually a little bit when I was there, because all the guides who were talking about Andalusia and the history there were very much honest, and they were drilling into people like, it's not what you think it was. It's these people were living peacefully together in their communities, and it wasn't like there was some tax stuff, but there was no oppression, and it was
the most open society that existed in Europe at all.
That's what's being taught now, Cameron. It
Oh,
was
no, no.
the
I mean,
people who are there.
Spaniards.
Yes.
When I went to Spain, it broke my heart. The people are being brainwashed with a false history of their own history of their nation. My taxi driver he told me his family has been in Granada 600-700 years. He knew nothing about it except the propaganda of the school things, which was, these were Islamic occupiers. When you are part of a country for 800 years, you are not occupying it. Right, you are the defining culture of it, right? And so and they were talking, they oppressed us and all this stuff and suppressed science. I'm like, no, it's the opposite. It was literally like all of science was preserved in Andalusia. Like the Renaissance happened because Plato and Aristotle were lost in Western Europe. They were lost in the Dark Ages, and so they were translated from Greek into Arabic in Granada and Toledo. Toledo was the primary area.
Yeah,
there was a library in Toledo where the Islamic scholars were translating Plato, Aristotle, and the Greek classics. So what is the Greek classics we have today of the Plato's Republic, Aristotle, all of Aristotle, none of them are from Greek because all that is lost. All the versions we use today are translated from the Arabic because that's all we have, right?
I know, that's so crazy.
That's all from Toledo in Islamic Spain. And so, but the people of Spain are being brainwashed. And I'll share with you this one story that I learned when I was in Granada that a professor told me. Said recently the government of Spain, this was like 4 or 5 years ago when I was there, the government of Spain had commissioned a DNA test, like a bride-spanning DNA test comparing the citizens of Andalusia, southern Spain, and with northern Spain, right? With Barcelona and that, right? And so, and their expectation was that the genetics would show that these are two fundamentally different people, that the Andalusians were more connected to the Arabs and Moors of North Africa, the Amazi, the Berbers, and that the northern Spaniards were more descended from the Normans and and the Visigoths and whatever. Okay, and they were almost going to use that to show, look how wonderful it is that we treated this other minority ethnicity. They're still there. We didn't wipe them out. Right. And look, these minority Arab descended people of the South, they're all Christians now, but we didn't wipe them out. And that was the political agenda behind the DNA test. But the DNA test results came in and they suppressed them because the DNA test results came in and said all of Spain has the same haploids. They all had the same DNA. But after 800 years, all of Spain had Arab blood in it. All of it did. And so all of it was one race. So when the Inquisition pushed out the Jews and Muslims of Andalusia, it was a civil war because they tell themselves this was an occupying force of an external culture that occupied us for 1,800 years. No, this was your own people. They were just people of three different
Yes.
religions that were the
Yeah.
same ethnicity.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
they had to suppress that because that went against their own narrative that these were two different peoples that had ruled Spain. It's one people. They were intermixed.
They also don't talk about the fact that they could have they actually what became Spain later, the remnants of it, they left. Like they could have pushed them completely out, but they left the northern areas and let them be and traded with them, and they didn't have to. There was nothing stopping them from pushing further north, but they stopped where they were. And they settled, and they became one. They did become really
They became
one
one
culture.
nation.
Where,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, and it's interesting too because like a lot of people just think, oh, Spain, like it was one giant country. Like that didn't
No.
happen. Like these are all like little different places. I mean,
They were
my
all
mother's
these
family's
different
Italian.
towns,
one ethnicity. Yes.
Yeah,
There was
Italy
2,000
wasn't like
religions.
a thing until
No.
like post World War II or like World War I and II, like between the time when they actually unified the country. I mean, it wasn't. There's all these different areas.
It
It's
was
like
like what
you're
Germany used to be.
Genoese, you're like whatever.
So guys, I should probably start winding
Yes.
down. I actually have
Yeah.
things that I need to do in the morning.
Thank
So
you.
I hope this conversation was of interest. I think the chat seems interested. Now, most
Yes,
people-
No.
chat loves you, Cameron. So yes.
I will take it.
That was outstanding. Thank you so much, Cameron. So, the Patreon. First of all, I can sell the Patreon because I go there every day, multiple times a day. Actually, you update your Patreon. It's and the news that comes out of there is all stuff that you then will hear about 3 or 4 days later that will come out through other YouTube channels. But it's all from the source, and it's all you have these amazing connections you've made with people who this is full credit to you for maintaining your sources in a way that I don't think newspapers are able to counter that. And these are people who are coming to you with stories that then come true and very specific, not vague stories or hints. This is very specific stuff. And like the story that you broke on the FTX, that's a whole that's
Yeah, I had to go
unreal.
like read that. I need to join your Patreon still.
Well, and
You put
it's
it-
being spread, and
like-
now our friend Doomcock is hearing it now from his sources, and Zero Hedge is not talking about it. I mean, it's my Patreon. It started off as a place just for me to talk about Hollywood and whatever, and it evolved into. I still talk about Hollywood and give my opinions on things, whatever, and all that, right? But what it has evolved into is over the last year and a half, I've amazingly got these sources specifically within Disney. I've seemed to have all these friends inside of Disney, high level people within Disney that subscribed to my Patreon, reached out to me, identified who they were and where they worked. And they were all disgruntled with the system of what was happening to Disney, Lucasfilm, all these different things. And so they started feeding me real intel. Like they started feeding me memos and things that were not that I would put out, and then they would be reported 48 hours later by the trades. So it's like, okay, this is for real, right? And so we've had some. I've got some pretty powerful sources that have direct knowledge of what's happening inside of Lucasfilm. And in the last several weeks, I've been breaking incredible information because these unhappy, disgruntled employees within Disney who are very unhappy with what happened to Lucasfilm under Ms. Kennedy have essentially decided they're going to use me as their, and I actually have now directly confirmed some of these people and know not just that they've sent me memos that I can prove. I've actually met with some of these people directly. I'm like, oh, okay, this is you really are this person, and you are this person within Disney. And if anybody finds out, you're going to get fired. Like I now know that for sure. It's not just like the evidence is being supported. I've now met these people, and the information they're giving is accelerating. And so if you subscribe to my Patreon, throw a link in there. We had several major breaking stories, and such as what's happening with Star Wars Celebration. I just broke this week.
Yes, this is big.
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it blew me away. And one of the people inside of Disney said, "Just want to let you know that they've seen the press packets for the upcoming celebration that's happening in the UK in about 4 weeks, and the press packets are all about." Essentially honoring the Star Wars celebration this year is not about Star Wars. It's about honoring Kathleen Kennedy and all of her glorious triumphs, which is exactly how they're going to let her go, which is give her this great Viking farewell, right? The Viking funeral pyre, right? And so the very fact that they've now authorized this, it was so expensive that my source revealed the Kathleen Kennedy farewell events are so expensive that they had to cancel next year's celebration to cover it. Right, but that was the agreement with Iger. Said if you're going to push me out, you're going to give me this glorious ending at Star Wars Celebration, which he's getting, and so that broke, and that's hitting the industry hard. Because
do you think they're kind of doing that to maybe keep her quiet or something? Or
well, I mean,
I
mean, they're definitely all of this has been to keep her quiet because she's got leverage on all these people. That's why she's still there, right? But it's her agreement. you know, that if she's going to leave, she has to leave on an incredible note, right? She's got to, it's like her, you know, she's got to ascend to Valhalla kind of moment. And so I broke that. And then now just today, I've been breaking a lot of information on this Acolyte show, which seems,
oh my gosh, that's insane.
Isn't really happening, but they keep pretending is happening, right? And so my sources have been like, no, there's no
fake
Acolyte
hiring.
show. And there's a lot. I mean, it's literally like it's like psyops. They're like putting stuff out in the trades, which is literally not true. In order,
I think they're doing that with the Wheel of Time too. They have not like announced season 2 when it's going to air, and they're throwing pictures up of the Two Rivers set, and they're saying we had to rebuild it to film season 3. And I was telling them, how do you guys not know it's not the same thing with the Acolyte, where they're just taking a picture from the first season build and saying it's season 3 in order to try to generate hype. They feed it to their shills on YouTube and on Reddit and stuff, so it generates the fake
and
interest.
then they can show their bosses, look, there's demand for this.
Exactly,
don't cancel this.
Exactly. That's what
which
I'm
is exactly
saying.
what the Acolyte is. It's a psyop.
Yeah, isn't that
It's
crazy? And
Yeah,
I'm like, how? I'm like, I gotta wonder, like, the legality, because that seems like extortion to me. Like,
Well,
is that like? There's a
Hollywood.
very fine line there.
All of this is certainly unethical, and I'm sure some of it is criminal.
Yeah.
But Hollywood doesn't care about that. Right?
They don't care. Yeah, it's Hollywood, dude.
I mean, you're talking about criminality. It's a lot worse criminality they've gotten away with than misleading investors. That's low on the total bill of criminality in Hollywood, right?
Yeah, so, that's just like run of the mill.
But come to my Patreon. Come to my Patreon.
Yes.
You will see it's accelerating now. I think as Miss Kennedy's final days are approaching, and yes, they are approaching. The floodgates are opening, and so people are feeling more comfortable sharing things with me. And with respect to all the people on YouTube, everyone has different sources. All I can say is my sources are actually actively scooping things that are then revealed in the trades 4 days later. So that's happened so many times. At this point, it's like, okay, these people are not lying to me. There are misinformation agents. Lucasfilm and others have hired people to go and to lie. I mean, they're lying about the Acolyte, right? They hire people to lie, not just to the general press, but also to YouTubers, right? And to spread false information. I know from consistent success that the people are talking to me are revealing the truth, and the truth is quite shocking now. So come join me on Patreon. I think you'll be surprised at the information that's coming out, and there's more coming out every day.
He's got so the link is in the chat several times. It'll be in the description as well, and here it is now. But he's got 6 stories since he broke the Kathleen Kennedy story 2 days ago. Like it's constantly updating over there. What I like about how Cameron puts these together is he's a lawyer, so when he says something, he's sure that he's covered when he talks about it. And also,
I'm careful with my language. Yes.
But it's important, Cameron, because most people are not. And what you also do is you take facts and you take information, you put together, and then you can tell a story from that.
Yeah,
you don't try to tell a story and then look for things to back it up. You do things the way you're supposed to do it, and I appreciate that as someone who's. I don't want to have to waste time waiting through, is this true, is this not? And you do that for us.
It's not like you're like Sedan or something. That stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff's crazy though. I'm always surprised at the amount of stuff that comes out of Sedan, and it's like that is totally true.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love those gossip sites. I gotta be
honest. They're funny.
I love the Hollywood gossip sites. Whatever, I go to them all the time. Even if they're not telling the truth, it's fun. But whatever. But so it's good. So please come join me. And again, thank you for letting me come on to this. I hope I can come again. We try to make this as regular. I can't necessarily do it every week, but maybe in the next few weeks can do it again. And I love when we can take it to these spiritual and paranormal.
Oh, that's always a fun thing to talk about. I mean, like, Hollywood's like, it's Hollywood, but the other stuff, man, meat and bones.
People love this too. So thank you so much, Cameron. And Lisa, Lady B.
Please.
Yes.
What do you got coming out?
Oh my goodness. I have no idea what I was going to do. I have not been feeling well. It snowed last weekend in Southern California. It snowed for an hour, and the weather has been making me feel terrible. And so my fibromyalgia is just off the charts. I'm thinking of doing some more Wheel of Time stuff. I'm talking to Wheel of Time fans and doing short, like maybe 15-minute interviews with them and how they got into the series, what it means to them. And hopefully I want to do another live stream with the ladies again. And maybe we'll see, maybe Jay would join me and we can talk about race cars and things that go really fast. And that would be really fun. So I hope that we can get that together again, like for like March, and have a fun thing. Oh, it is March already. Fibromyalgia brain.
Yes. So as for me, I'm just enjoying this moment right now, and I'm going to thank you both for being here. And I'm continuing to put out stuff. Monetization is back, and so I'm in a good spot. I feel good, and going to play us out to get Cameron out. Let's do.
He's got a variety of hot chicks he starts at.
I know, and I was just gonna say,
I'm okay with
Cameron, like
I'm
that
okay
was
with
great talking to you again. I mean, I had such a great time the first time we did it, and then the Wheel of Time stream was amazing. That was super fun.
You know, maybe Lady Bayflower, maybe I can come on and talk about what I did on the Tron animated series.
Oh, I want to
Oh, that would be fun too. Yeah, I mean, how you develop that
right now on Disney Plus. It's back on, and people are watching it now. And it sort of vanished until Disney Plus put it back on, and so it's got new fans. And so I'd love to talk about what happened and what went wrong on that show.
And people have been asking about that in the chat as well, Cameron. But I will get you out of here with Conan.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies,